but we will open the hearing now, if that's okay, Charlie, all right?
Yes.
Get your breath. Okay, it's now 7:09. It's the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. It's a Zoom virtual meeting, and sitting as the Board of Appeals at this point are myself, Woody Chidick, Mike Dickey, Charlie Higginson, Dave McMorris. We're also joined by John Hallen, the building inspector, and Cassandra Thayer, assistant clerk, and Matt Watkins is due to join us probably in another 10 or so minutes. And Lee Darst is not going to be present, so we'll be a 5-member board for tonight. And we will start with some tag end hearings that we began a month ago. The first of which is 30 Beach Street, application for a dock. Cassandra, have we gotten anything new from the Hobson Putziger family?
I don't
this
believe
one?
so, no.
Okay,
Not as of recent.
is there anybody in the audience that
Let me see.
wishes
I
to speak?
thought I saw Caroline is here. I can promote her. Here she comes.
She's muted. Does she wish to speak?
Good evening. I was listening in. I didn't plan on speaking, but
No, you don't have to, but if
Okay.
you would you give us your name and
yes, for the record, Caroline Reese and Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors in Norwell, Massachusetts. And I represented the Putzinger and Peter Hobson family for this dock. And I didn't have anything to add tonight, but I was certainly wanted to listen and how the decision proceeded.
does the board have any questions for Caroline? Or
No.
if not, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Charlie, I move that we close the hearing.
Second,
Okay, moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye.
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Okay, we will deliberate on this, a bit later. The second one is again for a dock, at this time at 55 Black Horse Lane, filed by Lynn Baranowski. Again, do we have anybody wishing to speak?
Jeff Hassett is here. Jeff, if you want to speak, if you want to raise your hand. If not, you don't have to.
If there's nothing new to add, I mean,
He's not raising his hand, so.
okay. That's the only one, so I'd again entertain a motion to close this hearing for deliberation later on this evening.
So moved.
We close this hearing.
Okay, moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye.
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Okay, now the next one I'm recused. I'm going to ask Dave if he would. I don't know who chaired this last time. Dave, you did you?
Either
Matt
myself
did.
or Matt, so,
Oh, Matt
Yes.
did. Oh,
but I can do it.
okay. I'm going to mute myself and until this is over.
Okay, and this one is the 30 Forest Notch.
Yes.
Work here.
Let's see.
Okay, this is Diane and John Rocha. The applicants, John Chiriaki, submitted a slightly revised plan along with a cover letter last week. The revision essentially was to add a little bit onto the garage, which is part of which is in the non-conforming area. Apparently they have to pour a new foundation for the garage anyway to do a second floor on it. So they'd like to get the garage out to a more standard size. John, do you want to explain this in a little better detail than I did?
Sure. Good evening, John Teriyaki, Teriyaki Architectural Design. I'll share my screen to briefly go over the change request that we submitted. We basically got some new information that the garage foundation as existing is not adequate. It doesn't go down deep enough into the ground, even though it's cast in place concrete to support 2 stories. So we were notified by the structural engineer that the garage basically has to be reconstructed foundation wise. Therefore, we wanted to take the opportunity to make it slightly larger to at least accommodate 2 cars a little more comfortably. So we wanted to push the left side wall out about basically 1.5 feet. And then we wanted to push it towards the front by 2 feet. This is all in the conforming area. The additional non-conforming area that would add is this little rectangle that I noted here, which equals to about 13 square feet of additional non-conforming plan area. And we submitted the updated facade areas as well on all the facades. And the net change between the previous proposal and the new proposal was a total of 38 square feet in facade area, all facades combined. So in the previous submission, the total facade area was added, all non-conforming proposed facades added up was 3,497 square feet, which was a 39.1% increase. And with this adjusted plan, we are at 3,535 square feet, which is a 40.6% increase. So the total increase, the net difference between the two was about 38 square feet, which we feel that is within the context of the project. It is an insignificant amount, but it will have a significant impact in terms of being able to park 2 cars in this garage, especially since it has to be rebuilt anyway. So that's in summary why we had to submit that last minute request, and we appreciate the board taking that into consideration.
He likes to take the ferry, so
Any of the board members have any questions or comments?
I think he goes.
Sandra, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak?
So he's with us, please.
I don't believe so, and there's nobody in the Q&A.
Okay, and can we have a motion to close this hearing?
Saturday or so. Friday, no, he said Friday, well, to me, he said
So moved.
Friday or Saturday.
Second. Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
All right. Hearing's
Thank you.
closed. We'll deliberate later tonight. So if we can find Woody.
Here
There
I am.
Third,
Okay, now we have a special permit, which is a new hearing really, because we didn't spend much time on it when it came before us in February, I think. And this is again, a request for a dock at 185 Jerusalem Road, filed by Adele and William Morris. And they need relief under 97E. So I'm getting my stuff, but then I imagine they are being represented by someone.
there she is.
Sandra, who's going to be speaking on their behalf? Or are they?
Pulling Carmen Hudson up right now,
Okay,
and
See this, I got
and Adam Brodsky.
because your door in the hallway is actually 2 inches narrower than.
And Matt is here too.
How about panel made?
One.
Other standards. And take some new.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Chair Chittick, it's Adam Brodsky. Can you hear me?
yes,
Good evening, everyone. I am together with Carmen Hudson, representing the Morrises. And as you know, this is a special permit for a pier and dock in the floodplain protection district. We submitted revised plans principally to minimize, candidly, the visual impacts of the pier and dock. While that's not a stated purpose of the floodplain bylaw, we did so in order to attempt to address the abutters' concerns with respect to the project. The pier and the dock will be located entirely on the Morris's property. And within, you may remember, the 6-foot strip that is actually owned in fee simple. I know that there was some suggestion that they didn't own that property, but in fact, they own the 6-foot strip. And the lot extends past the proposed float some 400 feet to the center line of the creek. So the structure is entirely located on their property. As Carmen will explain, the pier and the dock have been designed so it can be constructed entirely on the lot with no need to trespass onto any of the abutting properties. And Carmen will explain how that will be done. And otherwise, the project complies with the requirements of section 970. And with that brief introduction, I'll turn it over to Carmen. Thank you.
Good evening once again, Carmen Hudson from Merrill Engineers. I would like to share my screen so I can go over the plan. Okay, can everyone see this plan?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the revised plan. I wanted to mention the reasons why it was revised. So we were originally scheduled to be in front of you in January. However, the day before our hearing, we received several letters of concern from abutters. So we requested a continuance so that we could address as much as we could the concerns that were raised. And the primary concern was the height of the dock. I wanted to point out that the original, of course, now my piano doesn't work. So the original plan had a different, it didn't have a 1-to-1 profile. It had the horizontal scale was 10 and the vertical scale was 5. So I did that because that scale shows more detail. It's not as short. However, because there were different scales, the dock looked very high. So I thought that may have been a reason why there was so much about our concern regarding the height. So this profile is scaled at a 1-to-1 scale. So these are the exact, if you were to put a scale, you use the same scale horizontally as you do vertically. And the height, what we were trying to do was keep at least 5 feet over the salt marsh. Now that is a concern for conservation. The Division of Marine Fisheries normally requests the Conservation Commission for a 1.5-to-1 ratio of separation to salt marsh. So we were trying to address that, and even though we weren't proposing 6 feet in height, which is what the Division of Marine Fishery wishes.
Adam Brodsky.
So that was the reason for the 5-foot vertical separation to the salt marsh. So this revised plan, I changed the scale of the profile so it would be a 1-to-1. And also we changed the vertical separation to the salt marsh to require a minimum 1-to-1 ratio. So we're only providing 4 feet of separation to the salt marsh, which I know will be troublesome for the Conservation Commission and the Division of Marine Fisheries. So in an effort to try to appease them, we will go to the Conservation Commission after the Zoning Board of Appeals. We are proposing to use composite decking that will have perforations on the decking that will provide much more access of lighting through the decking onto the salt marsh underneath. So even though it's more expensive, that should hopefully allow us to bring this dock down the way we're showing it with a 4-foot separation to the stringers. We also reduced the length of the dock from what we originally submitted by 30 feet. So the total length of the dock is about 104 feet now. It was originally 135 feet. Let me see. We also provided this blowout, so it would be easier to see. And as Adam mentioned, this strip of land right here is 6 feet in width, and it extends to it's called the channel or the stream. There is a stream that you can see a little bit in the aerial, but also you can it goes into the culvert that goes under Jerusalem Road. So the distance is this distance right here, and this is per the locus plan is let me see, it's almost 500 feet, 468 feet here from this point right here to the creek. So this is all owned by Mr. Morris. There are no easements over this strip of land. He owns the corner lot here as well as this strip of land that goes to the creek. The float and the ramp are proposed to have a minimum setback distance to the side property boundaries. For the float is just 0.25 feet. Because once again, because this is 6 feet in width, the float is 5.5 feet in width, and the deck, the pier is 4 feet in width. Now the method of construction will be from land. The dock installer will use a gas hammer that he can carry. We reduced the size of the pilings from 12 inches in diameter to 6 by 6 maximum. So having the smaller piles, he'll be able to do, hammer them down by hand with this portable hammer. I believe that covers all of the changes that we did to this dock and the concerns that you had regarding the legibility of the plan, as well as whether this strip of property was owned by Mr. Morris and whether there were any easements on it. You had also requested to see an aerial of the neighborhood and the proposed dock. So this is from MassGIS. So these are approximate property boundaries. Here you can see that creek. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is the creek that they mentioned in the deed. So the property extends, this property boundaries, normally MassGIS as well as Cohasset GIS show the approximate mean high water mark for the seawardmost property boundary. This property, however, extends to the center of the creek. As you see, this dock only extends beyond, it is really just beyond the limit of the marsh. There are some other existing docks as well. The channel itself, that's where mean low water is. But this property is described on the deed as just going to the middle of this creek. And at this point, I would like to address any questions that you might have for me.
Who wants to go first? I see Matt, you were here as well. Watkins has joined us. I'd like to, I've got a few comments, but I'd like to hear from board members. Would one of you like to start?
Carmen, obviously the side setbacks are very minimal. Can you tell me what they were again? It was like
So-
0.25, right, on one side?
Yeah, so for the float, which is a removable float, it's 0.25 feet, and you can see it better actually on the blow up. So it's 0.25 feet for the float, and for the pier itself is a foot.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of getting set up here, but I think, and David, you might be more likely to jump in on it, but I don't, my understanding was that we need more of a side setback for that for a dock.
If I could jump in on that one, section 5.2H. Under our general regulations, no other structure except for flagpoles and a couple of other things shall be located nearer to any side or rear lot line than either 15 feet or the permitted setback distance for a building in the lot. So the way I read that is that each side of this dock has to be set back 15 feet from its lot line.
So Mr. Chittick, this is Adam Brodsky. I'm not aware of the zoning board of appeals applying side yard dimensional setbacks to piers. And in fact, I
We
consulted,
do that in every application.
Every
probably
one.
for the last 5 years. We've probably had 15 or 20 at least.
well, in order to clarify that, I did reach out to Mr. Helen to ask for his guidance on that. And I would appreciate his opinion on that.
We can hear his opinion, but I'm telling you what the bylaw says.
Yeah, my opinion was on was just on the physical structure.
Whoops. We really can't, John,
Comment
you're
on that.
cutting in and
Again,
out.
our discussion was. Oh, that must be my, is that better?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
opinion was on that it stayed within the setbacks, building wise. Again, the building code only addresses it from the high water mark inland. So we don't really have jurisdiction over the waterways. There, but you know, structurally there was no problem with that. But again, the zoning bylaw I didn't address.
But a 6-foot strip even on the upland portion, right, would, I mean,
Yeah.
how would they meet any setbacks?
They couldn't, they'd need a variance. I mean, I think,
So, Mr. Chittick,
yeah.
the floodplain, right, is located right here.
Mhm.
So that is outside of the floodplain, and this is within the floodplain is a zone AE elevation 10. So anything below elevation 10 is in the floodplain. My understanding was that the requirements for a dock were in section 9, and the requirements for a dock do not include the requirement to abide by the building setbacks for section 5. That we only
Well,
have.
that's your understanding. Maybe you could tell me where that exemption, if you will, comes into play. Where do I find it? In the bylaw?
So there is, like, if we were to go with the requirements of section 5 for the setbacks, then the requirement for the rear setback also would be needed for every dock. And most docks, not only they might cross the rear setback, they any float that is floating all the time means that the float itself is beyond the mean low water mark. And that would mean that the ramp at least is crossing the rear property boundary. However, there is never been a requirement for a variance for, having a piece of the pier of the dock crossing the rear setback, including the dock that was just presented on Black Horse Lane. So if I don't see the difference between not having to require, a dock to abide by a rear setback, or the side setback. Either setback would require a variance, and I don't recall any of the dogs that I've worked on ever requiring a setback for crossing the rear building setback, if it were required.
And Mr. Chittick, if that's ultimately the opinion of the zoning board, we just want that interpretation of the bylaw to be applied uniformly, and I don't think it has been.
I don't recall any docks for which we've issued a special permit that were within the side setbacks. And I do recall several that were re-engineered and moved to conform with the side setback. So maybe, Mr. Brodsky, you can, if you know of any, you can let me know what they are.
Mr. McMorris, I do not know. And again, if ultimately we need a variance for this project, we'll submit a request for a variance. We just need clarification as to what the rules are.
I think you just heard from Dave. The practice, certainly, the rules have been that side setbacks are adhered to, and obviously, as Karen points out, you can't have the dock not cross the lot line, much as you can't have, I suppose, I don't know, a path, but
So and again, I'm not arguing the point. So for every dock that extends into the rear setback, that dock should also have a variance request.
no. I don't really see that. I see a variance requests for side setbacks.
Says located nearer to any side or rear lot line than either 15 feet. I'm just reading from 305-2H.
I don't know. What do you think, Dave, Matt, Charlie, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking back at a number of the decisions that we've done, and we've always looked at, you know, the structural height, the ground coverage, and the side setbacks as standard, you know, practice for us. That's why I was surprised when it was presented to see how small the side setbacks were. That would be my take on it, but I'm looking through some of the criteria here. I haven't seen anything that would persuade me otherwise.
What do you think, Dave?
I think that the rear setback thing is kind of a possibility in a dock, which is why it doesn't come up. There's also the issues of, you know, where the property line is at mean high water, where our jurisdiction ends, you know, relative to that boundary. So I haven't really thought that through, but I do. We have always followed the side setback rule because that's where you interfere with your neighbor's property. You don't interfere with your neighbor's property to the rear because you're out in, you know, federal jurisdiction or out beyond our jurisdiction.
As a matter of fact, the dock, as it goes out into the into Little Harbor, continues on this property, but it doesn't need a variance from us because it's not within our jurisdiction where it ends. And that's typical of any of these docks and gangways down, but it is within our jurisdiction above mean high water. And if the float were above mean high water, we'd probably have an issue with that too, but it isn't. And I think that's the distinction I'd make. There is no, this is just going into the water. It's somebody else's jurisdiction, not ours, but the side is ours.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we will ask for a continuance, please, so we can address the variance request. Obviously, I need the client's authorization to submit a variance request.
Well, why don't we continue? There may be a couple of other issues to save yourself some redos.
Can I ask another question? Isn't there a dock a dock on the property currently?
No,
No?
no, there is a dock next door. You can see on the plan.
Okay, I was looking at your overhead thing that was up there for a minute.
This,
Yeah, why don't you go back to that, Carmen? That's it. Here we go.
so there is a dock next door for
Mhm.
15 Nichols Road. However, there is no dock for 185 Jerusalem Road. This is the proposed dock
I see.
in blue.
But you know, that this is this magic marker or whatever that delineates lot lines is kind of sloppy. I mean, it looks like the dock is going over onto the neighbor's property, the way it's drawn.
Okay, so the property boundaries here are from Mass GIS. So they're approximate, and I located the dock approximately where it is. Here is in pink is the 6-foot strip of land, and the dock is within there. So you can see that it goes beyond the salt marsh. I do have a couple of questions, if I may ask them.
So
Yeah.
Carmen, before you do ask your questions, Mr. Chetka, you'd have to rely upon the survey plan. The scale from Mass GIS based upon an ortho photo, I don't think can be relied upon. But the site plan is surveyed and accurate.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I was just confused by that existing dock. So that is not on this property.
No, that existing dock is right here on 15 Nichols Road. So I just wanted some clarification. So what you were saying is that the ZBA only has jurisdiction to the mean high water line. So that would be here about elevation 3.5. So the only portion of the dock that the board seems to have an issue with then is this portion right here. Is that correct?
No, we're going to have a concern with the setback to the neighbor's property.
All the way down.
Yeah, I can't tell from this drawing what's, what everything is. It's,
Okay, so this is the mean high water line.
where,
Right here in red.
oh, okay.
So are you saying that the ZBA does not have jurisdiction below the mean high water mark? Did I understand correctly?
I thought it was mean low water.
Mean low water is in the channel, so this entire property is so up to here is above mean high water, and below here is below mean high water but above mean low water.
So I know we've considered applications and looked at the differentiation, but for example, we'll ask for the total ground coverage as a whole for the dock, but then we'll zone in on the area that you have there beyond, mean high water.
So this area,
So that, I
Mr.
mean,
Watkins,
but we look at it as a whole project, but I think it's probably accurate to say that our jurisdiction is within that area that you spoke of, but I guess
Well,
it's all part of the dock, right? So I guess.
I'd also like to see that, where does it go? I mean, does it wander back out toward the salt?
I'm
Salt
sorry,
marsh? Mean high water. You just have a short little piece of it marked.
mhm.
Where does it continue?
Are
On
you
the
talking
landward-
about the sides?
On the landward side.
So I don't have the mean high water mark, beyond. We don't have any topography on the adjacent properties. So once again, this is from MassGIS, so it's just approximation. So if you were to go by this line, the mean high water mark would go like that.
You know, I don't see that this map here, which shows in blue, the proposed dock extends quite a bit more out into mean high water than this drawing here.
Are you talking about this, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair? So this is an approximation.
Well, I'm not, approximation isn't good enough.
Well,
I
we
think for our
cannot.
purposes.
Well, we cannot, so you had asked for a neighborhood, something that showed the neighborhood. We certainly cannot actually survey the neighborhood. We would be trespassing. So this is showing the entire neighborhood with approximate property boundaries.
Now, does this show a dock that's 104 feet long through the
Yes.
gangway?
Yes.
Okay, and if I just eyeball it, but again,
Mhm.
it's a little difficult. It looks like about at least a third of that dock is above mean high water. If the magenta line,
The magenta line is not accurate. It's just approximate.
well, then you're gonna have to give us something accurate.
This is accurate. This is accurate. We're going by elevation. And it has the entire property boundaries. It is certified by a professional land surveyor and is based on the ground survey. So this is accurate. This is mean high water. This is below mean high water, but above mean low water. And this is above mean high water. When I was originally looking at this, I was just looking at the bylaw and I could not find anything in the bylaw that made a differentiation between a rear setback, and that's for a building or structure, and a side setback. So I know that there have been many dogs, including many of my dogs, that have been approved crossing the rear setback. I just never saw it on the bylaw as far as a differentiation between the side and rear.
What would happen, John Hallen, maybe you can help us here. Who would have, if anybody, have jurisdiction over building below mean high water? Could I, as a citizen, build anything I wanted, a 50-foot wide structure?
Mr. Chittick, this is Adam Brodsky. I can answer that. In addition, obviously, to a special permit from the zoning board for a pier within the floodplain, you obviously need an order of conditions. But this pier will actually be permitted through Mass DEP Waterways Program and required to obtain a Chapter 91 license. And that process has very specific construction requirements, including engineering requirements to ensure the integrity of these structures. In addition, we'll need to obtain authorization from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under the Programmatic General Permit. So this is really the first step in a very lengthy process to authorize a pier. But specifically, to answer your question, Mass DEP under the Public Waterfront Act has jurisdiction over all flowed tidelands, and that would be everything below mean high water. And so, I mean, they technically would have jurisdiction and do have jurisdiction to regulate that aspect of the project.
Is this, can I ask, is the float above mean low water?
Yes, this entire piece of property is above mean low water.
So this float for at least a portion of every day is going to be sitting in mud.
Yes. Yes.
So this is
It's
basically
bottom
like is this a kayak and canoe type dock?
More than likely, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. So it would be exactly like this dog right here. You know, it would bottom out every day.
And Mr. McMorris, the reason you want to build a structure like this is because you do not want to be walking and dragging watercraft across the salt marsh.
Mhm.
Salt marsh is the most protected wetland resource area in the Commonwealth. And that's why the DEP wetlands, as well as the Conservation Commission, wants to see elevated walkways over salt marsh in order to protect the
Well,
salt.
actually, I don't think they want that. I think they require that, but I think they want just an uninterrupted salt marsh would be everybody's preference.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you because the regulations require these sorts of structures so that you don't do damage to the salt marsh.
I
Again,
understand.
the people buy waterfront property because they want access to the shoreline. That's actually one of the principal tenets of the Chapter 91 program, is to guarantee access to the shoreline, both for the property owners and in certain instances for the general public. And so that's why there are exceptions to build these structures over salt marsh, and that's why when we propose to lower the structure to address the visual impacts, which again is not a zoning or a wetlands consideration, but we're trying to do this out of consideration for the neighbors, in order to allow sunlight to continue to flow through the structure. We're proposing a composite pass-through material that allows sunlight to pass through the decking at a substantial additional cost to the homeowner to build this.
Charlie Higginson. Sure.
I agree that we have applied the or looked at the setback and the docks that I remember approving.
I think every one, as a matter of fact, I can't think of an exception. Doesn't much matter if there's an exception. I mean, the general rule, I mean, it must be 80, 90, 95% of the time, anyway. You know, there's another criterion, not that, I don't know, Matt, Dave, does our jurisdiction end even on when there's a construction of a structure rather in mean high water, and that we really don't have any jurisdiction over where that goes? It could, in fact, I suppose, technically go on somebody else's property. They'd have to deal with that in court, I guess.
I don't really know the answer to that question. I know that generally speaking, when we're dealing with mean high water issues and our jurisdiction goes to mean high water, basically we're talking about the ground coverage of piers.
Yeah, the pilings.
We're not talking about setbacks because, I mean, I don't recall ever seeing anything like this, where you have pretty much the entire dock sitting on the property line. So I don't know the answer to that question.
I think that might take a little research. You know, there's another criterion in addition to 9.7 when it comes to docks, and Adam, it's at 2.1 definitions, private boat dock. It's the first part's pretty simple, a single dock for the private use of the owner of the land on which it's constructed. Okay, a single lot, in other words, a dock, you can't have two. But then the next sentence says it's located such that it will not adversely affect the property of abutters. Now, I'll leave it up to the abutters to probably, raise that point and try to articulate impacts, if any, on their property. But this is something that I know that we've gotten a lot of letters on, people being worried about the impact of on their property value. And I think we got a letter from Ben Lacey not very long ago, indicating that he had done some research in this matter. There will be an opportunity for all the people in the audience to speak, but this will have to be addressed. You might want to hear what their arguments are first, for all I know, and then, kind of frame your response accordingly. But I just raised that's in our bylaw, and says the private boat dock will be located such that it will not adversely affect the property of abutters, affect is usually economic, but not always.
Thank you, Mr. Chidick. I'm aware of that definition. I mean, it would have to adversely affect the neighboring properties in a manner that's protected by the zoning code. And so I don't think anything we're going to do is going to be physically impacting their property. We're certainly not going to be exacerbating flooding conditions, which is the purpose of the floodplain protection district. Whether or not your bylaw protects the value of the neighbor's property, if they could demonstrate a diminution in value associated with a pier, I do not know the answer to that question. It's generally my experience that when people articulate that some project is going to adversely affect the value of their property, that generally they're unable to secure expert testimony to back that up. But again, that may be the case here. I do not know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just, if people in the audience are taking notes, and you'll have a chance to speak. Section 1, which has to do with the scope of zoning laws, section 1.3.c, the purpose of the zoning bylaw is to conserve the value of land and buildings, including the conservation of natural resources and the prevention of blight and pollution of the environment. So that's one of the fundamental, it's really a chapter 40A fundamental purpose of zoning in this state, to conserve the value of land and buildings. You're right, Adam. It's can't be hearsay or just glibly thrown out there, but it will have to be addressed.
And again, I would read that to apply to conserve the value of my client's property who's trying to get access to a shoreline. So that very well may be applied to the conserve the value of land of abutters, but would equally apply therefore to the value of my client's land, which
Sure, and then I go back to the purpose, which that it will not adversely affect the property of abutters. So the abutters have a stake in this game. There's no question.
Oh, and I'm not diminishing that, Mr. Chittick. I'm just trying to understand the board's thinking in the context of the code. And
Yeah, well,
I learned something new every time I appear in front of the board.
So do we. Board members, do you have more questions? I'd like to loop back if he's going to either reapply. Oh, and the other thing that hasn't been brought up to date is your application itself. Simplified application for special permits. You've made some changes since the January 4th receipt, but the application itself has not changed. That ought to be updated.
Yes, sir. If we're applying for a variance, I assume that we're going to have to renotice that, provide notice to abutters and re-advertise.
Yes, indeed. But I'm asking the board, do you have other requests of the applicant before we hear from neighbors, and then we'll kind of loop back and make sure that we're clear and precise in terms of what we are going to want to see. I for one would like to see a better, a more accurate depiction of the lot lines from the bird's eye view, the aerial view, and the to be sure that this proposed dock is, if it does go forward, is within the ownership of the abutters, of the neighbors. No, of the owners. Sorry.
So, Mr. Chittick, we're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to create an aerial photograph which has the accuracy of a survey. That's why we have a surveyed plan. So that's simply a chalk to, I think, that was created to respond to the question as to where is this proposed pier in relation to other proposed piers. But we're not going to be able to create an aerial photograph that has the accuracy of a survey.
Okay.
Mr. Brodsky, do you know if there's any case law about setbacks with docks?
I could find no reported cases dealing in the town of Cohasset with respect to docks and setbacks, because
What about other towns?
I did not look at other towns because each town handles piers and docks very differently.
felt we could,
Just one other comment, Woody, too. Just I think it kind of does in what 9.3, 309.3 kind of talks about the jurisdiction and that whatever zone it's in, those restrictions apply to the floodplain, or it kind of gives that implication too, not necessarily referring to rear side setbacks. It just says, that it needs to adhere or conform to that too. So I think David had mentioned that earlier.
so this is the RC district, I believe, is it? Adam?
Yes.
So I guess what you're saying is that the floodplain and watershed protection district is an overlay district. And that the requirements of the RC district underlying RC district also apply here.
But Mr. Chittick, I would note in your table of dimensions, it does not call out a side yard setback for a pier. I believe the reference to side yard setback is to building and to accessory building. So that was some of the confusion.
The setback is to structures.
Not in the table. It's not.
It may not be in the table, but it's in, take a look at 5.3H. And said, and no other structure,
sir.
not building, no other structure shall be
No, that was
located nearer to
That was
the
the
side.
provision that you directed me to. I understand that.
And the dock is obviously a structure, so it just says the docks have to comply with the setbacks of 15 feet or whatever the permitted
Yes, sir.
distance for building on the lot is.
Located nearer to any side or rear lot line than
Right.
either 15 feet or the permitted setback. Again, if that provision applies to piers and docks, I would have to comply with both side and rear lot setbacks. That was the point I made earlier.
No, maybe it applies.
Certainly cut down the number of docks going into these bodies of water.
I think this is going to need some research. I can't believe in a kind of a water dependent state like Massachusetts, there haven't been a few cases.
Well, Mr. Schick, there are many cases dealing with piers and docks, many cases dealing with it in the context of the waterways regulations. And I'm assuming many cases dealing with zoning bylaws, but they're zoning bylaws for other towns. For example, I do know, I've done piers and docks in other towns, and they have very different zoning bylaws. So it's very hard to draw any general rules given those different regulatory schemes.
Well, you can see. You know a lot more than I do, so you're probably
sir.
right,
That-
but
that-
I would
that-
like to at least research it.
Yes, I can speak intelligently about waterways and wetlands. And with respect to the finer points of zoning for this pier, I'm learning.
Well, board, are we ready to hear from people standing by? Cassandra, I presume that there are people in the weight room.
Yes. So Anne Brophy has spoken quite a few times in the Q&A. I'm wondering if it would just be helpful, instead of me reading off each of her comments, if I just promoted her.
Sure. Is that okay with the board? Dave, how about you?
Okay.
Shirley?
Yep, fine by me.
All right.
She has 6 different comments and I don't want to misquote her.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Hi, so thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Virginia Ann Brophy. I live at 16 Beechwood Street, so I am not in a butter. However, I am a vested individual in this because I am member of this beautiful community that we are all so very blessed to have the privilege of living in. And one of the most beautiful jewels in this town is this little harbor. And I did send in a letter back in February when I thought that this was going to be heard in February. And you'll have to bear with me because I tend to get a little bit of stage fright, especially when it's something so near and dear. So I might misspeak here, but I just am astounded by this applicant moving into the neighborhood and
Wait a
putting
minute, wait a minute. We're not gonna,
Okay, so I'll stop
taking
right there.
shots or talking about individuals, okay? Otherwise,
Okay.
I'll just cut you
I-
off.
I understand, but what I would like to say is this dock, if you look all over the town and you look at all of the docks, whether they be short, medium, or long, they all, and maybe I just missed it, but they all stay within the extension of their own property lines. I don't recall seeing any dock that comes out from one property and goes to the left or the right to span the backyard of the neighboring parcels. And that's exactly what this does. And adjusting the height and then the material so that it doesn't create a shade. I don't see how that is enough of a mitigation factor. And if you look at the special permit section 312.4A, a special permit shall, not may not, but shall not be granted unless and until the granting authority, and that is you, has made written findings that the special exception will not have an adverse effect on the adjoining properties or properties generally in the district. And I would submit that the proposed dock, as you're looking at it tonight, would absolutely have an adverse effect on the immediate neighbors and in the neighborhood. And I don't understand, how can they justify this proposal when, you know, if they went straight out from their property line, would they still have access to Little Harbor? Yes, they would. So this proposed dock is not the only solution for them to have access. Is it, if they don't get this dock, will it impede their use and enjoyment of Little Harbor? I would respectfully say, no, it would not. Would it unreasonably and adversely affect the natural resources and beauty of the area? Absolutely.
Well, you know
Absolutely.
what would be helpful is, and we are going to continue this, obviously, is for you to put some more factual support behind general comments. I mean, it's, you know, I hear you, but we can't really ask hypothetical questions and leave them in the air. We have to answer those sort of questions if we can, and if we cannot, we can't consider them, I think. But so I wanted to give it a little more thought in terms of what kind of impact, negative impact, which is your concern, that might have on neighbors and how that could be evaluated.
Well, I will definitely do that, but I would also have one request, and that is whether or not the applicant would be able to produce for this board rendered drawings of what the view from the backyard would be of the two properties that that this dock would span. If you're standing in that backyard or standing at the kitchen sink, looking out the window towards Little Harbor, what would they be looking at? Number one. And also, what would they need to do in order to go from their backyard to their own use and enjoyment of Little Harbor if this dock is there spanning their entire backyard? Are they going to have to duck their head and, you know, do the kayak underneath the dock? Would that even be possible at all tides? Or are they going to have to go all the way around the dock in order to be able to have access to Little Harbor? So I will definitely put some factual write up together on how I think that this would negatively impact the neighbors and the neighborhood. But I would appreciate it if the applicant, who they're the ones that are requesting the variance, if they could possibly put a
Well,
little
why don't
thought
we,
into
okay,
that.
I hear you. Why don't we move on and we'll factor that into our guidance or conclusions tonight. Well, we're not concluding much of anything, but I hear you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Thank you.
Sure. Who else, Cassandra?
Nobody else is in the Q&A. If anybody else in the audience would like to speak, they can raise their hand. But I'm not seeing anybody as of yet.
We got a pile of letters.
You
Not
did
one-
indeed.
Not one of them wishes to speak.
No one is raising their hands.
Geez, that's interesting. Okay.
Oh. Now there's one. Now there's two. Going to promote David Maltz first. There he goes.
David.
Are you promoting him?
You're currently muted.
Mr. Maltz is promoted, but he needs to unmute himself.
I believe I'm unmuted at this point.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think I have stated in 2 letters my objections to this. There are some other facts that came up tonight that we need to find out about. But basically, I thought it was only a 5-foot strip. It may be 6 foot, and that's for somebody to find out. More important is that they don't meet the setback requirements, and that access from the property, from my property and from other properties is going to be limited by the creation of this dock, and lowering it from 10 feet to 5 feet does nothing to go ahead and to improve that access. I think the question really becomes if there's no jurisdiction beyond the mean high tide, who has jurisdiction beyond that? And if I'm remembering correctly, that where the state has jurisdiction, people have access between mean low tide and mean high tide. And if this is going to interfere with access between mean low and mean high, then I would suggest that that would be a negative in permitting the dock. I think the other comments Ann Brophy has made, I don't need to repeat any of those. Woody basically getting some more information on how you deal with the difference between mean low and mean high tide, and what the overlay district allows you to do would be very useful as we look further into this request. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay. Thanks, David. Who else, Cassandra?
There is one more. Let me just switch them out. Working on promoting Mr. Morris now.
It's muted. There you go.
This is William Morris. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, my wife and I bought this property to enjoy Little Harbor and to have access to it. And I don't know all the rules, therefore we had to engage a couple of firms here to help us through this. But we want to enjoy Little Harbor. I have a disability. I can't drag my canoes across this length of saltwater marsh, plus the amount of damage it would do to that saltwater marsh. To me, I'll have no access. This will limit my access and will essentially give me zero access to the water. So I respectfully submitted this plan so that my wife and I and our family and my grandkids could enjoy Little Harbor like everyone else in town. That's all I have to say.
Oh, okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up.
I believe that is all.
Okay, well, I think it's probably one of the things we should do is, well, the Goldbergs and Ben Lacy are two people who sent a lot of correspondence. The board, have you seen these letters? You want me to read them or what? Or does everybody have a copy?
I read them.
I have a copy.
Yeah, I think we have copies, Woody.
Okay, are there any points that either the Goldbergs or Mr. Lacy are making that we haven't touched on tonight?
Yeah, I did have one kind of unrelated question, I guess. What's the situation with conservation?
This is Adam Brodsky. We would need to submit a notice of intent for an order of conditions to approve the project, but we can't submit the order of intent until we've applied for all obtainable permits, including our zoning permits. So this is the first step in the process.
Okay.
And I just do want to point as a point of information in response to Mr. Maltz. The issues of navigation and access along the shoreline are squarely addressed by the Chapter 91 program. And those are issues, and they have very specific regulatory standards for those. So I just want to assure Mr. Maltz that those issues will be reviewed by Mass DEP in connection with any Chapter 91 license if we're ultimately able to secure a special permit in an order of conditions for the project.
I also wanted to point out, this is Carmen Hudson, that right now, as the plan shows the dock, we are providing a 5-foot vertical separation for at least 10 feet in width at mean high water, which is the requirement for a Chapter 91 license. So the dock, as proposed, already abides by the requirements for public access.
Okay, the access is between mean low and mean high. You're talking about, right?
Yes, yeah. Yes, what the Chapter 91 requirement is to provide 5 feet of vertical separation for at least 10 feet in width at mean high water, or it could be between mean high and mean low, where their jurisdiction is. And actually, it's not just between mean high and mean low. They try to make it at or close to mean high water. And if that is not possible, if it's not attainable, then you can provide stairs so that the public could go over the dock.
And Mr. Chittick, just to be clear, these are the public's reserve rights under the public trust doctrine. You don't actually have unlimited rights to cross over tidelands on your neighbor's property. You have to be engaged in fishing, fouling, or navigation. So I just want to be clear that these are limited rights under the public trust doctrine.
Yeah, indeed. And that's a Chapter 91 issue, you're saying?
Yes, sir. Just a matter of Massachusetts common law. It's an interesting topic. I have a personal interest in.
Okay, Mr. Goldberg has got a lot of concerns that both in terms of the construction and the disturbance of the tidal area, and also removal of the float seasonally, that kind of thing, with the barge run aground and I would assume those are conservation issues, or is that a Chapter 91 issue?
A little, Mr. Chair, Adam Brodsky, a little bit of both. Again, there are engineering and construction standards in the Chapter 91 regulations. The project will be reviewed by their waterways analysts who have an engineering background to ensure that we meet those standards. Things like the storage of floats are typically conditioned by the Conservation Commission. And so they'll have standard conditions that say that you can't store your float, for example, in the salt marsh. You can't drag the float over the salt marsh to bring it on the upland. And most people who have floats would tow them at the end of the season to a location where they can be pulled out of the water and then stored in an upland location. So again, those would be addressed by the Conservation Commission.
Part of my concern with this setback stuff is it's hard for me to envision practically how this thing gets constructed within the 6-inch space between where the dock is going to be and where the neighbor is without trespassing.
Mr. McMorris, all that I can tell you is that we spent a great deal of time with our contractor to review those issues, and Ms. Hudson can explain the exact methodology. We've come up with a methodology to ensure that we will not trespass onto the neighbor's property. And we can certainly provide that in writing so that you have a better understanding. But Ms. Hudson has command over that issue.
We did provide it in writing, actually.
Thank you.
It's in that the letter that accompanied the revised plan. But also, besides consulting with the contractor that Mr. Morris already has lined up, I consulted with another contractor that also said that it was possible to construct it. So as I had explained, it's going to be done with it's a gas operator hammer. And it's going to be, because we're talking about 6-inch 6-inch by 6-inch piles. So this, I don't, you know what, I don't think I shared my screen. So let me share my screen.
And while you're showing the screen, Carmen, I've got your letter of March 16th. I don't see anything that deals with construction of the dock itself and why there won't be trespass.
So it's just the last paragraph of the first page. The proposed dock will be installed without trespassing into the neighboring properties. Gas-powered manual equipment will be used to install the piles from the land. No barges will be needed during the installation of the pier. So this is because it is a 6 by 6-inch pile now. That's the maximum the maximum size of the proposed piles. The dock installer is going to have. This is like a manual gas powered like hammer, and he's so what he has to do is he would be in a ladder and would have a pile down, and he would just be hammering it from above. So he can be on the side of, if I may. So he would be hammering standing here on the ladder, hammering one pile, and then standing over here, hammering the other pile. Again, it's going to be just manual equipment. And then he's going to set up his stage in there. He doesn't need any more because he doesn't have to bring any actual equipment, not even a tripod to do this. It would just be done with manual equipment.
And I guess, okay, Dave, do you want to know more about the process?
No.
Okay, the one thing that I guess wasn't clear, when we talked about mean high and mean low water,
Mhm.
no, those lines are on the ground. Something that's above mean high water structurally is within our jurisdiction, as long as it's, you know, in this district. So we have jurisdiction over the dock
Mhm.
until the dock or the gangway or the float or something goes below mean high water. And that's where the gangway and the float come in. But for most of the dock, if not all of it, we have jurisdiction.
So mean high water is here.
Yeah,
Is elevation 3.5, right? So what you just said is that the ZBA has, at least this is what I understood, that the ZBA only has jurisdiction of this above this line, so above this elevation. Below this elevation, you don't have jurisdiction over any of this?
on the ground, but any structural work that's above mean high water, we have jurisdiction. And some of the structural work, but
Oh,
by your own plan goes up 10 to 14 feet, correct?
okay, now I understand. So this line right here, this is the mean high water line.
Yeah, the dotted line, yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is you have jurisdiction over all of this, but not over the parts of the piles that are below mean high water? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
typically, yes, we've looked at
Okay.
ground coverage above mean high water.
Okay, okay. Okay, once again,
The Conservation Commission will have a point of view on that, but that's a different. Dave, do I have that right?
Yes, I believe so.
okay, now I understand. So yeah, so you would be everything for all the part of the structure that is, so it would be part of the ramp, the float, because the float goes up and down, as well as any part of the pier and the stairs that are above mean high water. Okay, now I understand. Thank you. Once again, what I didn't see in the zoning bylaw was a differentiation between setbacks for, you know, side property boundaries or rear property boundaries or front property boundaries. If one setback had to be abided by, then all of the setbacks would have to be abided by. And once again, I know of several dogs, including the one that was just before us, that crossed the rear setback, never mind the rear property boundary.
Well, okay, nobody else? Board, do you any last questions? Cassandra, I presume that we have nobody else waiting to speak.
The only thing left is Anne Brophy put one more thing into the Q&A. But she's referencing that she wants clarification on the last part. I'm not sure when she sent this message. The rest of it says a dock would be built that would impede the neighbor's access. They would have to either go under or around the dock, and the stairs that are required to be built in would only be allowed for the limited 3 purposes mentioned.
And is that a question, or does she want?
That was a question.
That confirmed? Adam, what's your?
Oh, again, under the public trust doctrine, you can cross over another person's tidelands if you're engaged in fishing, fouling, and navigation. So you couldn't cross onto someone's tidelands if you wanted to have a picnic on the beach. So I'm not sure that's any helpful. With respect to access, again, access is governed by the Chapter 91, and as Ms. Hudson said, access is already accommodated and provided for here. You have the ability to walk underneath the structure in pursuit of your public trust rights.
I presume that, yeah, that's nicely said by an expert. So I think that should satisfy her, but if she wishes to send us a letter and whatever, that's perfectly okay too. Charlie Higginson, comments or any other information you'd like to know here or here?
No, I think the setback issue is the critical one.
Yeah. Matt Watkins,
Oh, same, that's what jumped out at me. That would be my main concern.
and Mike Dickey.
Yeah, yep, no, I think the side setback issue is a big one.
Okay. John Hallen, comments or anything else you'd like to see?
No, I think most of it's covered unless there's, I think the whole strip of land that was determined early on was part of the property and not an easement with the rights to it. So that I didn't have any other questions.
We haven't, Adam will take your word for it, but we haven't seen any affirmative, deed or anything of that sort, but you're attesting to it here tonight that this is property owned by the Morrises, right?
Mr. Chick, I'm happy to send you a copy of the deed and the record plan. We ordered the title, the complete title, to be able to answer that question. I'm happy to provide the deed and the.
Probably would be good for the files.
Yes, sir.
I
Happy
would
to
think.
do so. And if I might suggest, again, if it's appropriate to consider a continuance, we probably want to push this out 60 days, because if we're going to submit an application for a variance and that has to be renoticed, I'm not sure we could do it for the next meeting. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Dave, how do you feel? You agree?
That's fine with me. I just also, when you do the review of the title, can you confirm for us that there's no easements?
Yes, sir. I did do that. I
Right.
confirmed that there are no easements, and I think we put that in the letter, but I can, when I send you the deed and the record plan, I'll also state that again.
Okay, thanks.
Also, for the record, we did submit the deed in our original application. We did not submit the record plan, but we submitted the deed.
Okay. Well, we have some time, so I would make a motion to, Adam, do you want to do this for a date certain, or we have to continue it to some date?
Yes, sir. I think you need to continue to a date certain. If you know when you're meeting in, that would be June.
June, yeah. So that'd be the first Tuesday in June, my friend Cassandra. What is that?
June 6th.
June 6th.
Why don't we continue it to June 6th? And if there's if that puts you in a time crunch or something else of the sort, we can always flex it out again, but just to meet and continue it again if you need it. But it sounds like you'd probably be ready before then, not afterwards, so.
Again, I need to consult the client and get authority to submit a variance application. We need to put that together, so.
All right, why don't we, all right, I'll make a motion to continue this hearing until June 6th for the purpose of re-advertising a different form of relief as a variance as opposed to a special permit. So I've made that motion. Oh, Charlie, was that a second or a question?
No. That's a second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye?
Dave McMorris, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Michael
Okay,
Dickey, aye.
good work. Okay, so 5-0. All right. We
Thank you
will
very
see you in
much. Have
2
a good night.
months.
Thank you.
What?
Good night.
Okay, good night. All right, well, the next one is a special permit at 62 Spring Street, filed by Jamie Suvak to build a covered front porch and any other relief as necessary. Is Mr. Suvak here?
Miss Suvak is here.
All right,
I'm going to promote her.
Hello,
hello.
thank you for listening to us tonight. I'm going to share my screen. So this shows, so we have that little square that's in the front by the stairs that's existing and needs to be replaced. And so what we want to do is extend the deck over to the edge of the house and put a porch on it. And part of the reason why it's important to us is that my fiance has OI, which is brittle bone disease, and he has mobility issues. And so it takes a while to get in and out. And right now there's no coverage, and it's pretty slippery and pretty narrow up there. So we are asking for this special permit to extend it across the side of the house. And then I also have, just so you can see, bring it forward here. This is a picture of the front of the house and it's marked out. You can see the porch that's existing and then where it would go over just to extend to the end of the house and be at the same height and a little less of the width that it currently is.
And it comes to 15.4 feet at this closest point to the front lot line, right?
Yes.
Okay, now you're familiar with the fact that, well, actually, this is a little bit larger, but we have a provision in the bylaw called permitted projection in section 2, which allows you by right to do an unenclosed entry porch, steps and bulkheads, which don't go more than 6 feet out from the foundation and don't exceed 30 square feet in area and are no closer than 6 feet to the property line. So the 6 foot part is fine. The 30 feet, it looks like you exceed that a bit. Well, you've already got pre-existing.
But Woody, this is a covered porch.
Well, see, we haven't seen the drawings, and we're going to have to see architectural drawings of the porch because, yeah, I wasn't clear about what it could be covered as long as it isn't enclosed.
It's not enclosed, just covered.
Well, we would need to approve a plan that would show that.
Okay.
But nevertheless, you're adding more than. Well, I don't know if you are or not. You do the math. I'm not going to do it for you. But
13.5 square feet.
How many?
213.5.
Of addition?
Yes. 7 by 30.5, right?
No, that's not right.
No,
How far out does it come? I can't quite. 2 feet out and 30.5 feet.
It's
lengthwise.
It comes 7 feet out from the house and 30 feet across.
Oh, is that a 7, not a 2?
Yes, that's a 7.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, you'll need, they're going to need a variance or a special permit board? What do you think? What do you think, Dave?
Variance.
I don't know.
You've got an existing nonconformity, it appears, that 7 foot bump out. And whatever its dimensions are, which we would need to see, but so this would be an extension of a nonconformity.
Yes.
And would be coming any closer, except for the stairs, to the front lot line.
Are the stairs already there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a nonconformity, and that's not altogether bad. Having a nonconformity allows you to do certain things that if you were creating a brand new nonconformity, you'd have a hard time with. The issue is this the tail wagging the dog? Is the proposed covered porch a great deal larger or not? But you can provide that information as well as a what we call an elevation, a depiction, ground to top of it, because we couldn't approve just a footprint. You know, I mean, this is a one-story porch, I presume.
Yes.
What district is this?
Go ahead.
What district are we in here?
What?
What district is it? RA or BRC?
Oh, I think it's an RA, isn't it?
RA on the
RA,
application.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't quite understand you may want to relook at the math you've got on this application. It says the existing front setback is 22.4 feet, and you're proposing to go to 15.4 or adding 7 feet. But that's not exactly true. Your existing looks like it's 15.4 plus the stairs.
Yeah, I might have just added the 7 feet to the 15.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't do that.
Okay.
You've got more volume in the setback, no question, but that enables you to apply under 8.7B. Again, that would be, I think that's right, isn't it, Dave or Matt or Charlie or anybody? Mike?
The 7B.
Yeah. But I would recommend, do you have architectural drawings?
We do not at this point.
Okay, well, you will have to have it because this is a non-conforming structure.
Okay.
And you'll have to give the dimensions. I mean, it's, precise dimensions of what exists there, what's proposed. I don't think the covered versus enclosed really at this point matters, because you exceed the 30 square feet that the bylaw allows. I mean, you're going to exceed the 30 square feet, so you can't apply benefit from the as of right
Okay.
provision. You do need relief. John, do you see it that way?
Yes, I think currently again, the existing landing is 8 feet out from the house, and the proposed is 7 feet out from the house. So they're reducing, as you said, that area there, but they're expanding the width. So also, this is a pretty unique property. As to one side is a 2-family home that was recently worked on with a front porch similar to what I think they're putting on. And then to the opposite side is a 6-family that's being redone. And behind them is an office building with 3 apartments above. So,
And in front of us is the train.
they're not really a standalone residential neighborhood. So I think, and it is a dead end street to it. And so I don't think it's any type of detriment to the neighborhood too with what they're requesting. But I do see the board's need maybe for the architectural drawings to help clarify, what they would like to
I
add.
wouldn't want to see, I wouldn't want to approve a footprint and find out no aspersions on you, but I wouldn't want to see a footprint then go way the heck up to 2 stories and just simply because we didn't ask the obvious question.
Right. That makes sense.
No, that's fair.
Just so you can see too, this is what you look out on. We're right. The only thing in front of us is the train, just to give you a little perspective on where we are. And then we have this way. This is the house, that 2-family that is next to us with the similar kind of what we would be looking to do. So we have that. And then on the other side is the large 6-family.
I don't think those other pictures are coming up yet.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
So you just saw the one from might have to stop share and share it again. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I don't know how to do that.
The best laid plans. I had them all out.
Well, tell you what, why don't you, when you do the rest of this, why don't you submit a couple of photographs of your neighbors and indicate,
Okay.
you know, the way that the neighborhood is laid out. Yeah, it is, as John said, unique, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. I can do
I mean,
that.
all three houses, I think, are multifamily, aren't they?
Except for mine.
Oh, yours is the only one
So
not.
mine's the only single family, and then there's multi-family on either side. It's just, okay, so this should be able to come up now, just so you can see what's on there. This is to the left of us. Can you see that now?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the type of porch that we would be looking to do. So just so you have an idea, but I can submit all of these.
Yeah, that would be great. Be very
Okay.
helpful. Okay. Got any questions on navigating the form or what, you know, Cassandra's available and I'm sure John.
Yeah,
has to-
she's been amazing. We couldn't have done any of this without her, because we're doing most of it on our own right now, so we appreciate it.
With any luck, they'll guide you the rest of the way.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd make a motion to continue this hearing until May, what did we say, 4? No,
May
that doesn't
2nd.
sound right. May what? Second? To May 2nd. So the motion's been made to move this hearing, to continue this hearing until May 2nd.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor, Woody Chidick, aye.
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Okay, good, that's done. We'll see you next month. Now, the next hearing is 20 Parking Way, but it was for a special permit, but it was not legally advertised. And so we can't hold a hearing on this. So I would, without much further ado, make a motion to continue this hearing too on 20 Parking Way until May 2nd.
Okay, I mean, we can't really even officially open it, can we?
So we ran into an issue where the newspaper messed up. It was not advertised in time for this evening's hearing, but when the applicant applied, they were in between the submittal dates, so they will hit the 65-day mark in like 3 or 4 days. I forget
3 or 4
exactly
days
what
from
it is.
now?
Yes. For when the hearing has to be opened.
Oh, okay. So we
So
haven't,
would they be
so we should
willing-
open the hearing and then continue it. No, Carolyn, I can't hear you.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to jump in, no, you can't open the public hearing if it wasn't advertised, but you can, if the applicant is present, you can obtain the consent of the applicant to extend the 65-day deadline for opening the public hearing so that we can make sure it's properly advertised. Cassandra, I don't know whether it can be re-advertised, say within the next 30 days, or whether we should
Yes.
ask for, okay, then
So
I would,
it is set to be re-advertised. The applicant has paid. I've cleared that up
Okay.
with the newspaper. The applicant has also submitted that they are okay to continue it to the May hearing.
is anyone representing the applicant present this evening?
I don't see anyone, no.
Okay, then I think what the board should do is accept the representations with Cassandra as being their indication that they consent to extending the 65 days for opening the public hearing. But I think we should follow up tomorrow in writing to the applicant to confirm that. And then
Yes, I
get
can do
that
that.
filed with the town clerk. Thanks.
Okay, so I could make the motion to continue this hearing based on the applicant's request to continue this and until May 2nd. So I've made that, that's okay, right? I can do that, I think.
If Woody can do that, I second it.
All right, there we go. Moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye.
Dave McMorris, aye.
Earl Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Okay, good work. Now we come to the last hearing. It's an appeal for 94 Black Horse Lane, 3 different lots filed by KD Custom Builders LLC, appealing the denial on January 10th of this year of a building permit by Mr. John Hallen. So I presume the familiar face. So
Good
why don't
evening.
we Adam, turn it over to you. This is, to say the least, complicated. So, you know, we'll try our best. I'll try my best, but we'll see. Go ahead. Tell us. I know you've written a long brief, but why don't you take us through verbally? And maybe you could step back a little bit if you feel like, well, actually, John could tell us why this was denied. And then we could hear from you, Adam, in terms of why you think that was perhaps a denial and error.
Mr. Chaddick, I'm happy to do this as you wish. I was prepared to tell you why, at least I think, Mr. Helen denied the 3 building permits.
Okay, well, why don't you start off? We'll get it all out.
Well, thank you. Would you be so kind as to also promote Carmen Hudson, who is the project engineer? Because I'm
Sure.
certain you're going to have questions
Yes.
regarding the plans.
Yes, I will promote her. Is there anybody else you need promoted?
I believe that Nino DeNuno should be in the audience. He's the principal of KD Custom Homes LLC, and I represent KDC.
Okay, I can promote him.
Thank you. And Mr. Chittick, a procedural question. There are 3 denials of 3 separate building permit applications. And I did request in my appeal to at least consolidate those 3 appeals in one hearing because the issues are identical across the board. And I don't know whether you're willing to do that and whether that's procedurally appropriate.
Well, procedurally appropriate. Let me first ask town council, are we willing? I'll ask the board, but Carolyn, Maria, is it procedurally appropriate?
Procedurally, yes, Mr. Chairman. The only thing is if you decide that you want to conduct all 3 hearings simultaneously, you should read the public hearing notices for all 3 at the outset.
And do I even have the, I mean, I've got the application, but does that have the public hearing notice?
It's on the agenda if you happen to have the agenda on you.
Oh. Right. It's easier. Okay, the first, I'm going to try to consolidate these. The first is an appeal filed by KD Custom Builders LLC, appealing the denial on January 10th, 2023 of building permit number 14968 at 94 Black Horse Lane, Lot E in Cohasset, Mass. Pursuant to section 312.3.B.1 sub B, file number 230223. The second appeal is filed by KD Custom Builders LLC, appealing the denial on January 10th, 2023 of building permit number 14320 at 94 Black Horse Lane, which is also known as Lot 7A in Cohasset, Mass. And this is again pursuant to section 300-12.3.B.1 sub B, file number 230223B. And the third is an appeal filed by KD Custom Builders LLC, appealing the denial on January 10th, 2023 of building permit number 14316 at 94 Black Horse Lane, otherwise known as Lot D, Cohasset, Mass, pursuant to section 300-12.3.B.1 sub B, file number 23.02.23. So those are the three appeals. Is it the board's wish that we consolidate them rather than have three separate hearings, given the applicant's assertion that the issues are exactly, or at least fundamentally, the same?
I have no objection to that.
If we need a motion, I'm happy to make a motion to that effect, Woody.
Okay, why don't you, Mike?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All right, moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Morris, aye.
Okay, moved and seconded. All right, 5-0. So, all right, well, let's hear from the appellant, and we can involve John and Carolyn as down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Chittick, and good evening again, Adam Brodsky for the petitioner KD Custom Homes LLC. And as I indicated, Nino DeNuno is the principal KDC, and Carmen Hudson is our professional engineer. You're likely familiar with this property, which contains approximately 8.7 acres and is located within your Residence B district, and presently contains up to 8 lots, which may be potentially buildable as lots protected by Cohasset's single lot exemption. However, KDC applied for building permits to develop only 3 of those lots, Lot 7A, Lot D, and Lot E. There's an existing single-family dwelling on Lot C, which will be retained. KDC proposed to construct on each of the new lots a single-family dwelling that would be accessed via new driveways. And these new driveways will connect to the existing private way that presently serves the house on Lot C. Lot D will be served by its own driveway, and Lot 7A and Lot E will be served by their own driveway. The driveways were proposed to be constructed with crushed stone with a minimum width of 12 feet. And at least from our perspective, were designed to provide adequate fire access, while importantly in this area of Cohasset, minimizing land disturbance and the removal of trees. There are various undeveloped rights of way that were created by various historic subdivision plans on this property. The locations of the driveway don't necessarily correspond with those rights of way. As such, if KDC is able to obtain building permits and develop these lots, those access rights will be secured by easements, which will be put in place prior to each of those lots being sold to new owners. Either Carmen and I can explain the plan further. I did send over to Ms. Thayer this afternoon what I consider a compilation plan. It's actually a site plan that shows lots D, E, and 7A together, as well as the proposed driveways. And I can either pull it up and share it, or Carmen can pull it up and share it. That actual compilation plan was intended to be included in the appeal package, but was inadvertently omitted. We did include the individual lot plans that, thank you, Carmen. Perhaps you can pull that back a little bit out further so the board can also see Lot C, which will be at the top of the plan. So Carmen, do you want to orient us at this point and just briefly explain what we proposed with respect to driveways, and then I'll come back to why we brought these appeals?
Yes, of course. Good evening once again, Carmen Hudson from Merrill Engineers. This is Black Horse Lane here at the end. As you know, it's a narrow right of way. The right of way itself is 20 feet in width. This is another right of way which was actually used for an approval not required a few years back to provide frontage to these lots right here. These two houses are under construction. This one may already be all done. So when you come to the end of this Black Horse Lane and into this right of way, all of this is existing pavement. This house has been here for years, and this circular driveway, all of this is a paved driveway, serves this house. There is a detached garage that is also served by this driveway. As Adam mentioned, this property is comprised of several lots. There is lot B2, C, D, E, lot 5, 6A, 7A, lot F here at the beginning, and lot 8. All of these lots belong to the applicant. These are all existing lots. This existing dwelling would remain, as well as this driveway. However, the driveway, we have gone to the Conservation Commission and obtained a stormwater permit for this development, and this driveway would be removed and replaced with a crushed stone driveway, and this shared driveways would be also composed of crushed stone. The right of way here ends here. This driveway, which would serve the existing house as well as the new house on lot D, would commence here. Once again, this would continue serving the existing dwelling, and there would be a new crushed stone driveway that would serve the new dwelling on lot D. A new crushed stone driveway is proposed, also coming off of this existing right of way and existing paved driveway, and it would cross these lots and provide access to this dwelling. That's the detached garage for this dwelling on lot E, as well as the dwelling and the garage in lot 7A. We are showing all of the utilities and the grading, so that there's a lot of lines going on. But I hope that I was clear enough as far as the driveways are concerned. So I think I unless you would like me to go over anything else, Adam?
No, thank you, Carmen. You do it much better than I can. So getting to the heart of the matter, Mr. Hallen denied the building permits for each of these lots for 3 reasons. First, he denied the building permits for alleged violation of the state fire code. And again, I believe I understand Mr. Hallen's reasoning. He believes that the driveways are not wide enough to comply with the state fire code, and that there's concern that the garage is isolated. That is, the garage that serves, that will be the detached garage for lot E, is isolated, and therefore that is a separate fire code violation. And as you likely know, I have the utmost respect for Mr. Hallen, but I do not believe that he has authority to deny building permit for violation of the state fire code, which is the responsibility of the Cohasset Fire Chief. And just as a point of information, I've been informed that Mr. DeNuno and KDC were never notified by the fire department of any problem with any of the driveways that were subject to the building permits. I know that there was a separate application for a common driveway, which is ultimately denied by the planning board, and that the fire department had provided comments that resulted in changes to the common driveway, but we're not aware of any comments from the fire department with respect to violations of the state fire code with respect to the driveways. And but I want to make clear, if indeed the fire department has a problem with the driveways, and they need to be modified to comply with the requirements, KDC is certainly willing to consider that and to modify the driveways to comply with those requirements. But again, we've never been notified by the Cohasset Fire Chief of any issues with respect to these driveways. So again, as a procedural matter, I don't think that Mr. Hallen has authority to deny the building permits for violation of the state fire codes. Second, Mr. Hallen denied the building permits because he interprets the Cohasset zoning code to treat driveways as accessory uses. And under your definition of accessory uses, an accessory use must be located on the same lot. So in other words, you can't have a driveway which crosses another lot in Cohasset. Again, I have not been doing zoning for a very long time in Cohasset, but I've actually not seen this zoning interpretation or seen its application. And in fact, in reviewing this with Carmen, we've identified dozens of driveways just in the downtown district, downtown area, which are located on more than one lot. And I've got to believe that driveways have always been treated as extensions of a principal residential use, because if they were deemed to be accessory uses, you can never have in Cohasset these driveways which cross another lot to get to the subject house. And again, we provided to you maps and street addresses showing just those lots served by a driveway that crosses another lot just within the downtown zoning district. And we believe that there are many more in Cohasset. And in fact, I was sitting on the Conservation Commission for another matter, and the Conservation Commission recently approved a new house with a new driveway that crosses another lot, which under this interpretation of the zoning bylaw would be prohibited, absent, I guess, a grant of a variance. In fact, if the zoning board is going to consider driveways to be accessory uses going forward, I'm not sure where that leaves all of the existing driveways which cross multiple lots. And I envision all sorts of zoning problems for those existing lots, as well as any new lots that are being proposed to be accessed via driveway that crosses over another lot. I respectfully suggest that's not a reasonable or sensible interpretation of the code. And, in this instance and in other instances would really undermine the single lot exemption, which the board probably knows has been construed broadly by the courts in Massachusetts. So we don't think that zoning interpretation is reasonable and is a reason to reverse Mr. Hallen. Lastly, Mr. Hallen denied the building permits because he asserts that the only shared driveways under the code are common driveways. And the planning board denied our common driveway permit, and therefore we're not entitled to building permits. As I mentioned, the planning board did deny a common driveway application for these lots that's presently under appeal. But first of all, and I made this clear in my letter to the board, the common driveway bylaw permits the planning board to adopt standards for driveways, that is common driveways. And in fact, the planning board did that and adopted its minimum standards. They were attached as Exhibit 16 to my letter. And the minimum standards make clear that drives serving 1 to 2 houses are not under review and approval of the planning board, and questions regarding drives serving 1 to 2 houses are addressed to the building inspector. So the planning board's regulations make it clear that they don't have jurisdiction over driveways serving 1 to 2 houses. They would only have jurisdiction over driveways serving 3 or more houses under their common driveway bylaw. And that's exactly what KDC did here. None of the proposed driveways serve more than 2 houses, and these driveways were presented to the building inspector for approval. I should say that the outcome of the common driveway application that's on appeal is not relevant to this. This matter concerns the building permit applications. But as a practical matter, if KDC obtains building permits allowing the proposed driveways, there'll be no need to pursue that appeal of the common driveway denial, and that appeal will become moot. In fact, I believe that KDC actually applied for a common driveway permit at the recommendation of the town, and only to ultimately be denied by the planning board. So if I just take a step back, again, the client has in excess of 8 acres with a number of lots, which we claim are protected by the single lot exemption. All they're asking to do is to keep the existing house and develop 3 new lots. Actually, this proposal for driveways serving 1 to 2 houses, whether you call them driveways or shared driveways, they're not common driveways. But the use of these driveways minimizes the amount of land that will be disturbed in this area, minimizes the removal of vegetation, and importantly, in this particular instance, avoids any wetland impacts. And as Ms. Hudson said, we've obtained a stormwater permit from the Conservation Commission approving these driveways to these 3 new lots. We think it's a reasonable proposal that balances the town's interest to minimize land disturbance, to preserve vegetation, to protect and promote public safety, and balance those interests with the developer. And I guess as a practical matter would result in mooting the pending litigation involving the denial from the planning board. So that's why we believe that Mr. Helen erred in denying the building permits, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Who would like to begin? There's a lot of issues.
There are only 3 issues, Mr. Chittick.
Would it make sense, or not, I guess, to ask John to just kind of summarize
I
his
think so.
position on it?
John, why
John,
don't
would
you give us a recap?
Sure, I don't have my denial letter that I had sent, but some of the issues I think, and Carolyn might have anything to add to this too, was we still haven't addressed the frontage issue for any of the lots and where they have frontage. And, you know, the fact even the single lot exemption isn't, you know, 0 frontage. It says reduced frontage, but, you know, so we haven't really addressed that in this plan. And then as to, you know, the summation at the end of, you know, my denial was that they required subdivision control approval through the planning board, which was, again, the first place we wanted to send them 8 to 9 months ago when they approached us, both the town planner and I, and that was a suggestion. Instead, they went to the planning board for a common driveway and were denied. So again, our same original suggestion was that they need approval through the subdivision control bylaw through the planning board. And again, the fire department does not approve the turnaround for the fire department as part of the building permit. They approve the smoke detectors and those type things. Again, that's why we felt that the mechanism of subdivision control was a place that that concern could be addressed with the fire turnaround. And again, the access of the driveways, are they accessing off of a subdivision? You know, is the subdivision up to standards? You know, we just need some type of standards there, and I don't think we have them anywhere. Again, with the frontage, and then the denial by the planning board. saying that they do need frontage.
Yeah.
to accommodate that.
Adam, where are you going to get frontage?
So, Mr. Chittick, if I can address Mr. Helen's points first, and then I'll answer your question. If you review carefully Mr. Helen's denial letter, it's January 10, 2023. It's exhibit number 4. You'll see that he did not deny the building permits for lack of frontage or for some requirement for subdivision approval. The grounds for the denial are set forth in that letter, and the appeal and the 4 corners of the appeal are based upon that letter. These lots all have the benefit of the single lot exemption. I just read the transcripts that we just received from the planning board hearings, and the planning board acknowledged by the end of that proceeding that indeed these lots had the benefit of the single lot exemption. So I don't think that's.
I haven't seen that. You haven't submitted that to us, have you?
No, sir. We just received the transcripts in connection with the appeal. I need to send them to town council. So I don't think that there's any. I don't think there's any factual issue that these 3 lots do not have the benefit of the single lot exemption.
They do not have the benefit, you're saying.
No, sir, that they do have the benefit of the single lot exemption.
You just said they do not.
I'm sorry if I misspoke. It's late at night. I'm dealing best with the cold that I have. And so there's no question that these 3 lots qualify for the single lot exemption, and there is no requirement for frontage. There's no requirement for subdivision approval because these are lots which presently exist under plans of record that were recorded prior to the adoption of zoning in Cohasset in 1955. And as you know, the single lot exemption protects each of these lots. So there's no need for subdivision approval in order to develop these lots. If of course they wanted to perhaps develop all of these lots and build a subdivision road, that would obviously need subdivision approval by the planning board. That's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the impacts of building a subdivision road to access these lots.
So you want to build a common driveway, is that correct?
No, sir. We want 2 driveways, 2 shared driveways serving 1 to 2 houses as permitted under the regulations of the planning board. So as Carmen's showing you, there'll be 1 gravel driveway that comes off of the existing right of way that would serve lot E and lot 7A. And Carmen's showing you that. That's that 1 driveway, and as well as the garage. And then the second, Carmen's going to color in for you. Thank you.
Well, to the left of where it reads lot F, shaded, that's a common driveway, is it not?
No, sir. That's an existing private way that provides access to lot C.
So it's a private way that provides access to 3 or more structures.
No, sir.
The
only structure that presently serves would be lot C.
Right. And so if it serves, as it does, it branches out because inevitably these fingers have to branch out to serve any dwelling wherever it may be, 6A or E or whatever. But it starts off as a common driveway or a common road.
No, it's a private way. There's a difference between a common driveway and a private way.
But a private way that's serving 3 or more houses
No, sir.
qualifies as, well, it
So
does.
that private way presently serves the existing house in lot C. And we're proposing 2 driveways off of that private way. 1 driveway to serve.
And neither of these houses or none of the 3 would have frontage.
That's correct. They're not required to have frontage because they have the benefit of the single lot exemption.
What, would you read me the exact language, please?
Of the single lot exemption?
Yep, as it pertains to this number.
Again, that was never a ground that was asserted by Mr. Hallen, but I'll do my best to do that if you give me a moment.
Well, certainly, Adam, you don't expect, whether he cited that or not, there's no way, as long as I'm on this board, we're going to agree to something that isn't legal. So we're gonna get to the bottom of it, but it's got to be legal for us to accept your appeal.
Yes, so the grounds for denial provide the four corners of the appeal. If that was not a stated grounds, it's not appropriate for the board, in my opinion, and I'll be corrected by town council, for the board to consider other grounds. With that said, I don't think there's any dispute that these three lots have the benefit of the single lot exemption.
So you're gonna read me what that says.
I've got to find the single lot exemption in the bylaw. Please just give me a moment. sir.
83B.
Yep.
Two.
I have too many tabs on my zoning bylaws for this. Notwithstanding, and I'm reading 308.3 single lot exemption, notwithstanding the lot regulations hereof, a detached one-family dwelling or other lawful building may be constructed on a lot having less than the required area, width, depth, and or frontage, provided that all other provisions of this bylaw are complied with if, and we're relying upon subsection C, such lot was shown in the definitive subdivision plan duly approved by the Cohasset Planning Board and was in conformity with the area. I may have the wrong ones. Hang on, nope. I'm sorry, B1, I believe. Such lot on.
No, it really is B2. It's really B2.
Well,
But
you
it
need to
says it-
comply with all of them. It has to be lawfully laid out by. a
Oh, I
planning
know.
deed,
But
duly
dealing with
recorded in
frontage.
Norfolk Registry, and was conformity with the requirements at that time. These lots were created in.
The plain language, though, Adam, doesn't say they're exempted from any frontage, from all frontage requirements. It says buildings may be constructed on a lot having less than the required frontage.
So
Less
at the
than.
time.
It's
at the
not
lot-
zero.
Yep, so at the time the lots were created, there were no frontage requirements. This is prior to the adoption of zoning. And I can provide you with any number of cases which stand for that proposition. So if there were no zoning requirements for frontage at the time the lots were created, they're exempt from those requirements.
I don't see it that way.
Well, if that's the position of the board, the board.
I don't know
is-
if it's a position of the board, but
I respectfully suggest that you're mistaken. Is that if there are no frontage requirements, if the lots those were created, then they're not subject to any frontage requirements,
ever,
ever.
even though it does say that provided that all other provisions of this bylaw are complied with.
Yes, sir.
Today,
So
all other provisions today.
No, so we do need to comply, with the setback requirements, and I believe that all of these structures are located such that they comply with your setback requirements.
Well, just to follow that up, Woody, also that, then if we use that law, then we wouldn't need width or depth. So if we had no width, no depth, and no frontage, we wouldn't have a lot. So I think we're kind of, that's a pretty difficult interpretation, but.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, each of these lots does comply with your current lot area requirements, although it's not a requirement.
Well, why are you singling out lot area and not frontage? If they don't comply with frontage, you would agree.
I'm just telling you that we don't need to comply with area, width, depth, or frontage requirements. It just so happens that these lots do comply with some of those requirements. But under the single lot exemption, we don't need to comply with those.
Well, you do if any of these lots have changed. I'm not sure about the law of going across one lot to another. You said there were a lot of these, and you had a kind of a scatter diagram of some of these roads. How
Yes,
many
sir.
of these driveways were laid out before 1955?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you that at least several of them have been recently done.
Well, certainly we would agree that anything laid out in 455 couldn't have gotten zoning approval because there were no zoning bylaws. So you're just throwing sort of some random information here, some of which may be pertinent, some of which is certainly not.
I'm more than, well, Carmen has brought up 55 and 57 Beach Street. So those are new construction within the last several years where you have driveways crossing multiple lots to serve houses. And we can find more examples of these all over town.
No, we probably can, but.
So again, I don't profess to be expert in Cohasset zoning, but from the research that we performed, we've never seen this interpretation of the zoning bylaw being applied.
Carolyn, do you have a point of view on that one?
Well, Mr. Chairman, like Attorney Brodsky, I've only been with the town of Cohasset for not quite coming up on 2 years now. And the only common driveways or the only shared driveways that I've had any experience with in that period of time has been a common driveway application before the planning board. So I don't have any personal history of these other sites or, how these driveways came to be. I don't know if any other members of the board or if even John Hallen has anything that he can add about some of these other sites or a use such as a driveway crossing over one lot to serve another lot. I'm afraid I'm at a disadvantage as well.
Yeah, and I'm also not certain that just because something happened in the past, we should replicate it, particularly if it doesn't really comport with the zoning bylaws. I mean, you know that every situation is different. Precedent is given more than lip service, but not a lot more oftentimes. And
Well, I do have a different view of that, Mr. Chittick, which is that you have to have a uniform application of your regulations. And if you single out one particular applicant for different treatment, that in and of itself is not appropriate. And I'm not aware of any other applicant who's constructed houses with driveways that crossed over multiple lots in recent times, being told that that was a violation of the zoning code.
okay, well, we'll have to study that one a little bit more, but certainly I would disagree about the issue of you don't need frontage. You do need frontage, you just need less of it.
I'll be happy to provide you with cases that
Good.
make that point.
I hope you do.
And again, I don't think that's a legitimate ground for the board to consider on this appeal, but I will answer that question for the board.
Well, we're certainly not going to, if there's a defect in your plan or application, we're certainly not going to encourage it to be approved.
I believe the board's role is to sit as the adjudicatory body, reviewing the decision of the building inspector, and it's the grounds of the denial of the building inspector that are before you. If the board has other concerns regarding other issues, I imagine you can direct the building inspector to take enforcement if indeed you approve the building permits, if you think that there's a zoning violation. Again, I don't think
What
there's
about his third point, that the only shared driveways allowed are common driveways? Or, I mean, shared
I think
driveways for
I think that's
more than two.
That's wrong. The planning board's regulations say otherwise. I quoted you directly from the planning board regulations having to do with common driveways.
And what does
And I
it
gave
say?
you- I'm sorry?
And give me that again.
Yes, sir. So if you take a look at the minimum standards that were, these are the regulations that were adopted by the planning board for common driveways.
Mm-hmm.
And exhibit 16 in any of the packages.
Yeah.
And if you turn to page 204, you'll see the design standards for common driveways. And by the way, I did provide to the board the legislative history as to why the town adopted the common driveway bylaw is because they wanted to have construction standards for various sized driveways. And they began with driveways serving 3 to 5 houses. And if you read the minutes of the meetings, when the board was considering that I also provided to the board, it was because the town actually plowed driveways serving 3 to 5 houses. And so that was the minimum. And so they have different design standards for 3 to 5 houses, 6 to 8 houses, and 9 or more houses. And then in parentheses right below that, and I'm quoting this, pursuant to section 7.3.4 of the zoning bylaw, drives serving 1 to 2 houses are not under the review and approval jurisdiction of the planning board. Questions regarding drives serving 1 to 2 houses should be addressed to the building inspector / commissioner, close parentheses. So it was always intended that the common driveway bylaw would pertain to larger common driveways and would not pertain to driveways serving 1 to 2 residences.
See, I see a driveway here that's serving 4.
No, sir. So again, you're mixing and matching, matching concepts. There's a presently an improved right-of-way that serves this property and presently serves the house on lot C.
Yeah.
And off of that right-of-way, it's a private way. It's a private way. Off of that, we're proposing 2 driveways. One of those driveways is going to serve the new house on, and Carmen's cut off the plan, but let me pull up my own plan, on lot D. And then there's a separate, there is a separate driveway that's going to be serving lots E and lot 7A.
And what about to the north or of lot F here, where we have 2 new houses plus the gray house that's been abandoned somewhat? How do they get access?
Yes, sir. I do not know. That's not part of this.
They all get
application.
access commonly, and then you've got branches that come off. There are 4 houses, 1, 2, 3, 3 houses served, not shown on the plan here really, plus the existing house that was owned by Charles Smith. I think that's the one with the circular driveway.
That is correct.
And then you've got 2 other proposed houses there. So we've got a lot of houses here that are coming off Black Horse Lane.
Yes, sir. Which is Black Horse Lane is a public way.
Yes, but if you want to do a common driveway or other things, other houses, you need legal frontage. If you wanted to do a common driveway, each lot has to have legal frontage. I don't see.
So that was the argument. That was the planning board's argument for denial. They made the argument that they couldn't grant a common driveway permit because the definition of common driveway requires frontage. I believe counsel for KDC at that time argued to the planning board that the single lot exemption excuses them from the frontage requirements under the common driveway bylaw. And that's the issue that's on appeal. That's a separate case than what's presently before you. Because we're not proposing a common driveway. We're proposing driveways serving 1 to 2 houses, which under the planning board's own regulations are not within the purview of the planning board under the common driveway bylaw and are within the purview of the building inspector.
You have a single driveway that branches. And to my mind, if that driveway merges at the point of exiting Black Horse Lane as it exists, that would perhaps have frontage.
Well, I can tell you that is a private way. So, for example, I believe lot F would have frontage on the private way, but we're not proposing to develop lot F.
Yeah, the only problem, I think, with lot F, I'm not sure, looking back at the plans, is that lot F did not comply with the bylaws in 1961, so it doesn't get the single lot exemption.
And that we're not claiming, I'm not claiming the single lot exemption. I can't speak intelligently about the single lot exemption as applies to lot F, because that's not the subject of this application. The only thing that's being proposed here are the 3 new lots on, again, lot 7A. Excuse me, 3 new houses on lot 7A, lot D, and lot E.
Okay, help me in 7A. Or what happened to lot 7B?
There is no lot 7B, but if I might
Well,
just.
there was at one point.
So there was.
there was a lot 7.
6A, there was a lot 6B, there was a lot 7A, there was a lot 7B, I believe. However, that was back in 1926.
Yeah.
And then this lot E encompassed lot 7B and lot 6B, I believe, in 1936. So we have the years for each lot as they were shown and transferred back in 1936, and the ones that didn't change since 1926 are shown here as, you know, with the date for the plans that show them. However, I just wanted to make sure, I just don't know if because I think there may be a misunderstanding. I just highlighted in blue this private way. And this private way was used to provide frontage for an A&R for these lots. And it was approved for frontage. We are not saying that these lots have frontage upon that. However, these driveways commence at this.
I think you're misconstruing what A&Rs do and do not do. A&Rs do not create legal frontage necessarily. They're supposed to have legal frontage. But you could have an A&R and have a 3,000 or 300 square foot lot if you wanted to, and merge it or sell it or do something else.
Exactly. So what that A&R asserted was that this private driveway already provided frontage to this entire parcel. And therefore, the owner of that parcel had the right to subdivide his land through an A&R process because he had sufficient frontage offered by this private way. Therefore, what we are doing is we are proposing one driveway that serves 2 houses coming off of that private way that provided that had of this way that provided frontage. It wasn't created through the A&R. It already provided frontage according to the planning board. And another driveway that starts at that.
The planning board does not create legal frontage.
It wasn't created. They asserted that this was already providing legal frontage. Therefore, they qualified for an A&R. I don't know if I'm being clear, Adam.
No, you're being clear.
Well, but we're talking about something that's not relevant to the appeal before the board.
Yes.
Whether the lots associated with those other properties have lawful frontage is completely irrelevant to the issue that's presented to the board.
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure about lot 7A, which exists today at 31,192 feet, right?
Yes, sir. It was laid out by plan in November of 1926.
And in November of 1926, there was a lot 7. There were notations to lot 7A and 7B, but it was really lot 7, right? That was approved.
I can't speak to that. That was never an issue that was raised.
Well, the
in denial of
problem
building
I
permits.
have is that somehow between 1926 and whenever, lot 7 was altered. And I think by being altered, it gets disqualified as a buildable lot.
I believe that issue was addressed already and conceded by the planning board. Again, Ms. Murray attended those proceedings. I did not. And I think we're talking about something that's already been resolved. I do recall seeing in the voluminous.
Do you wish to comment now, or do you want to wait?
I will comment when Mr. Brodsky's done.
Okay,
No, I do recall that that question was raised, well, I don't recall, I saw documents that reflect that issue being raised and addressed by the professional land surveyor, who explained the layout of these three lots. And again, reading the transcripts briefly, I believe that those issues were conceded by the board. There was some outstanding question regarding whether lot C had the benefit of the single lot exemption, but that lot had already been developed. I don't know why the planning board was even talking about the single lot exemption, which only relates to vacant land, not land that's already been developed. But I didn't participate in those proceedings. Again, that's not a ground for denial. I'm happy to dig out that memo from the PLS regarding that issue and provide it to the board. I respectfully suggest if the board is going to deny this or uphold the building inspector's denial of the permits based upon that ground, I don't think that's a legitimate ground for the board to do so.
okay, Carolyn.
Well, let's start with lot 7A, first of all. Lot 7A is actually shown on the 1926 Bartow plan that is part of your packages. It may not be the most easy to immediately identify, but there is a lot numbered 7 that has 41,403 square feet. And it is, I'm not sure what the orientation is here, but I guess south.
You could almost
of
turn it
the-
around. It's, but what's facing up?
Exactly, you're
turn
gonna
it
turn it
around.
upside down to get it right. But there's also immediately to the left of it, there is lot 7B. But to your point, Mr. Chairman, if you look right under the notation of the 41,403 square feet, it then says 7A. So it isn't
Well,
quite
no,
as
no,
bold
no,
as some
actually,
of the other numbers.
actually, if I could disagree just a little bit, 7A has 31,000 square feet, 7B has 10,000. You add 31 and 10 together, you get 41. And I think what was
Correct.
registered was probably lot 7 as opposed to lot 7A and B, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know. That would have to be researched.
That I don't know if there was a distinction between what was registered, but you do have the notation of lot 7A with the 31,400 plus square feet. Which looks like at some point the larger lot 7 is divided into a 7A and a 7B.
Yeah. And if it was divided after it was registered, I think it loses its single lot exemption.
Well, but it's shown on a 1926 plan, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So that still would have been prior to the adoption of zoning.
Yeah, I guess what I'm just saying is, and we aren't going to resolve it tonight, is I'm not sure what was registered in 1926. Was it lot 7 or was it 2 lots, lot 7A and lot 7B? There may be a notation of lot 7 and A and B, but if you look at what's in bold, I would interpret this as there being a lot 7 that was registered. But who knows? Anyway, okay, we can move on.
Okay. Just a few other comments, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I know Attorney Brodsky mentioned that, the denial or the building commissioner's denial doesn't mention access. And I do beg to differ and just want to point out that the opening line of paragraph 1, where Mr. Hallen notes that the lots may be entitled to the single lot exemption under section 8.3B, but it goes on, but from a practical perspective, lots need access for owners and emergency vehicles. And then he continues on with respect to the fire code. Now, I agree with Attorney Brodsky that it is not the role of the Zoning Board of Appeals to get into the application or interpretation of the fire code. We leave that to the fire chief. But I think, and I don't want to put words necessarily into John Hallen's mouth, I think the access for owners and emergency vehicles led into his explanation relative to the fire code. And to my knowledge, I don't know of the fire chief or his designee weighing in on this application one way or the other. As far as, I think though that there is a question with respect to access. I realize this is not the forum for the zoning board to make any kind of determination as to whether or not the lots are entitled to the single lot exemption. But there is the question of whether or not lots with zero frontage are still entitled to be built upon, because you still need to be able to access those lots, whether it is for the owners to access them or whether it is for emergency vehicles to be able to get down and access those lots. I know when I looked at this back in June of last year, I had a slightly different view of zero frontage. I know that, that was simply my opinion. And I know that I have certainly had opportunities to discuss with others, including Mr. Hallen, that, reduced or less than the required frontage is not necessarily zero frontage. And he is the zoning enforcement officer. And so I do respect his opinion to that aspect of it. So that is something for the board to consider here. But if you accept that a lot with zero frontage is buildable, we still have to address whether or not the access is real and whether or not it is practical on the ground. And I think I'll pause there because there's certainly an awful lot here. I do also, I appreciate the clarification with you, Mr. Chairman, and Attorney Brodsky over how this common driveway branches out, because I've got to be honest and say, when I looked at this in black and white, it was not as clear to me how many lots were being served by a common driveway here. And I should say a shared driveway so that we aren't confusing it with section 7.3D of the bylaw. Having seen it highlighted by the engineer in different colors does certainly explain a little bit differently that yes, you're looking for 2 lots, each to be served by a shared driveway. One could say that that appears to be a circumvention of the common driveway bylaw. Someone else could also argue that that is technical compliance, leaving it squarely in the building commissioner's realm to assess. So with that, I will stop, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, my concern as well for the board, and then I'll shut up and let them talk, but is that there are, if you know this property, there's a gray house that's been not lived in for a number of years, but a farmhouse style, and a red barn, and kind of in back of it or towards Supper Island are 2 new houses still under construction. Well, one's
Mr.
inhabited.
Chittick, that's not this property.
What?
Those are
I know it
separate
isn't.
properties.
I know, and my point is, you're also, but it's being served at some point at the end of Black Horse Lane. It's being served by a driveway, and there are 3 structures there. You've got one that exists in your property, plus 3 others that are proposed, plus another 3 or 4 that are unbuilt or not shown as having a house today or a desired house. There are a lot of houses not only going up if this passes, but there probably are more houses not depicted here that will be built. And if that isn't a subdivision, I don't know what is.
Well,
And I think that was the
subdivision
basis.
is a very specific statutory thing. So we're not proposing a subdivision. We're only proposing to access our existing lots that are lawfully exist, and we have the benefit of the single lot exemption through the use of these ordinary driveways, which are permissible. I don't view this as as taking advantage of a loophole. There are numerous instances of driveways in Cohasset serving 1 to 2 houses that are not common driveways, because common driveways are a specific, specific regulatory beast. And I'm only aware of a handful of common driveway permits that have been issued. The majority of these driveways in town on these shared lots are ordinary driveways. And I do not read Mr. Hallen's denial to say that he denied the building permits because we don't have the benefit of the single lot exemption. He denied it because under the fire code, a fire access road must be 20 feet wide and 13 feet 6 inches in height unobstructed. And he goes on from there. And that's the problem, is that he does not have authority to deny the building
No,
permit.
but you had said earlier in your own testimony that his denial was based on 3 reasons. Reason
Yes, sir.
3 being that the only shared driveways that are allowed are common driveways.
No, sir, that's not what I said.
Okay, what did you say?
I can go back to it. There are 3 grounds. One, the assertion that he can enforce the fire code and that
Yeah,
these
okay,
driveways
let's move
violate
on
the
beyond
fire
that.
code. 2, his interpretation of the bylaw to say that driveways are accessory uses. And because an accessory use must be on the same lot as the principal use,
Right.
you can't have a driveway that crosses over multiple lots. And I said to you that is a novel interpretation of the zoning bylaw. Again, and we found numerous instances, both in the past and in recent years, where building permits has been issued for driveways that cross several properties. And then the 3rd issue, I just want to make sure I'm articulating this correctly. The 3rd issue being that this must be a common driveway, and the common driveway was denied. And as I explained to the board, specifically in the planning board regulations for common driveways, anything less than 3 houses is not a common driveway, and that the building inspector can grant a building permit for driveways that serve 1 to 2 residences, and it's right in the regulations. And common driveway bylaw was never intended to prohibit the use of ordinary driveways to access properties.
But I count 4 dwellings.
No, sir. Again, because you're conflating private way with driveway, and that's not what it is. And I respectfully disagree with that characterization. That is a private way laid out on a historic plan that has been used as a private way. A private way is
It hasn't
fundamentally
been just a
different.
private way for 3 new dwellings.
I'm
plus
sorry.
one existing.
I'm sorry, sir. I couldn't hear you.
Never mind. I mean, we're going to disagree on this one, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues. Who'd like to go first?
Not me.
I'm sorry, are you speaking?
I guess I'll just
Okay.
ask. There seems to be some dispute regarding the access by fire trucks. Has anybody checked with the fire department to see what their views are? I would say, again, if Attorney Brodsky is saying that, only the fire department can rule as to whether there's appropriate access for fire trucks, should we ask them? Would that be kind of prove the point one way or the other?
I think that's a good point.
I mean, I think road access is also in the building code as well as the fire code. So the fire department isn't the only one with jurisdiction.
Okay. Maybe, John, you could give us that citation kind of offline or at the.
Yeah, I'll get that to you.
Again, we've had no suggestion whatsoever that a 12-foot gravel driveway would not be sufficient for fire safety. If the fire department wants that to be wider, we're more than happy to accommodate the fire department. But to simply deny it for failure, to comply with, apparently the fire code is simply not within the purview of the building inspector.
I can disagree, but
Okay, others? Charlie, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to add, no.
Okay, what about Dave McMorris?
I concerned about the frontage, the single lot exemption, and the driveway issues. And I need some time to try to sort them out.
Yeah.
And I think, I need some more help from town council on this. And if Mr. Brodsky has some cases he'd like to share with us, I'd be happy to see them.
Matt, how about you?
Yeah, so I do have, some similar concerns to Dave. I think probably one thing that'd be helpful for the board is I do recognize too that Attorney Brodsky will want to go back to John's letter and kind of focus on those 3 points. So I think some of the issues that make us uneasy, right, are kind of things that extend beyond those 3 points. And so if we have issues that are beyond those 3 points, where does that land us? I mean, we've had cases in the past where, we've, most of the times I think we support John's decisions. If there's times where we overrule them, right, then the applicant usually presents their case in front of us for approval, and we have kind of a wider range of considerations. I just have noticed, and I don't fault them, but Adam's kind of wanting to say, well, you got to focus just on these 3 things. As a board, we have issues that go beyond those 3 things. So procedurally, I'm just trying to wrap my head around where's the audience for the things that might get broader than the 3 specific points on the letter, which, if you look at, because I share some of David's concerns with, or everybody's, I think, concerns with whether it's frontage, single lot exemption, the driveway. You could, number 1 on this list is, John might be sharing the same concern that we have with the driveway. He just happened to reference the fire department being a component of it. So kind of a little bit of back and forth there. But I guess my big question is just as the hearing proceeds, where do we go if we have issues that are broader than these 3 points, which is what is being asked of us to evaluate,
Yeah, so Carolyn, I mean, I don't want to really put you in the spot, but if in the course of a hearing and discovery, we find that there are other defects in the appellant's case that would justify a denial, and but not all of them were brought up by the building inspector, does that disqualify them from consideration on the part of this board, even though they may be zoning bylaw issues? And I don't mean that as, I'm not trying to make that rhetorical. I mean, it's an honest question.
Right. I think, Mr. Chairman, it depends what those other defects happen to be, and are those defects something that is a natural offshoot of something contained in John's denial, or is it wholly a separate issue that the board is identifying? I think if you can link it back to John's letter in some way, I mean, even though you might use different terminology, or you might phrase something slightly differently, if it links back to John's bases for a denial, I think that's certainly well within the board's jurisdiction.
Okay, and unfortunately, I've got so many pieces of paper I can't find this. The only thing I can't find right now is John's denial letter, so
Mr. Chit, it's exhibit number 4 in the various packages.
Yeah, I know. All right. As I say, you don't want to look at my desk. It's kind of messy. Wait a minute. Somebody want to read me a relevant portion or?
Well, I mean, I think, Adam summarized the 3, but John definitely
I
had
think I've got it here. Yeah.
more more detail on each of the items. So that's good,
Well, he's denying it. Let's say item 3, the right of way is a shared driveway serving multiple lots, D, E, and 7A. But it's also designed so that it could provide access to lot C and D. Well, it already does. But the only shared driveway allowed under zoning bylaws is a common driveway. And the planning board has determined that these driveway standards are not met. Here they have 0 frontage and don't satisfy the definition. It really boils down to access, as Carolyn said earlier, and do these have legal frontage or not?
So, Mr. Chittick, I think Mr. Hallen's letter is pretty clear that he was talking about practical access. From a practical perspective, lots need access for owners and emergency vehicles, and then he speaks to the fire code. There's no question, as a practical matter, that these driveways would provide access to these lots. Access is not illusory. You're familiar with that concept. It's more of a planning board concept dealing with A&Rs. But that's where you have a physical obstacle to gaining access. You've got a wetland that you've got to cross. You've got steep topography where you physically can't get access. And the cases regarding illusory access are pretty clear. I mean, if you can make reasonable access over your property, that's practical access. The particular issue that Mr. Allen's letter speaks to is, again, what are the requirements of the fire code?
That's one of 3 reasons, Adam. You
Yes, sir.
yourself would agree, right? He had 3 reasons in his letter.
Yes, sir, and I've addressed the other 2. I'm happy to talk about the other 2 some more. He's mistaken that the only shared driveway under the bylaw is a common driveway, because the common driveway regulations spell specifically that you can have an ordinary driveway serving 1 to 2 houses, and that's within the purview of the building inspector, not the planning board. So I don't think that that's a serious issue. No, I don't mean, that's the wrong word, forgive me. These are all serious issues, but I don't think that's a
But
compelling
lots D, E, and 7A are also served by this driveway. So this driveway, now going to Charles Smith's house, is intended to serve that one plus 3 new ones. That I
Yes, sir,
count
that-
4.
And
not-
again, I
not
think
2.
I think you're mischaracterizing that as a quote unquote driveway. That's actually a private way. It's a form of street is not the right word because that's a defined term. But it is a way which is different from a driveway. And to characterize that as a driveway, I don't think is accurate.
All right, well, maybe offline, you can get me, clarify the definition in Cohasset's bylaws of a private way that doesn't require, that isn't a common driveway and that isn't a subdivision and doesn't require frontage. I'm not seeing it. I don't recall it, but I
No,
don't.
sir, I don't think way is defined in the bylaw.
I'm sorry, but this private way provided frontage to all of these lots.
Oh, well, we won't get into it. It doesn't provide,
No.
in my estimation, it can't provide frontage because it doesn't really have it. And each lot has to have its own frontage, even though that, you can have a driveway that serves them. Each lot has to have legal frontage.
Yeah,
So there
Mr. Chair,
we
I would
disagree.
point
There we
out-
disagree. That's
Yeah,
all.
we have the bylaw does the code, I should say. The code defines street as a public or private way for vehicular use, which is commonly used by the public or dedicated to public use as shown on a plan of record. So, I mean, that is a private way. It probably qualifies as a street under your bylaw also. To characterize it as a driveway, I'm sorry, is, I think, mistaken.
Okay, well, board, I want to study a couple of these issues, of course, offline. I'm sure we all do. But sitting here tonight, I'm unconvinced. I may turn that around, but this to me, it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and I'd call it a common driveway. And if
Yes,
you
sir.
have
So
too many-
my job is to persuade you. Otherwise, I'll do my very best to do that.
Yep.
And failing that, someone else will make this decision. As I've expressed to town council, I mean, we're simply looking for a reasonable way to develop fewer than all of the lots out there. And to the extent that the town continues to make it more difficult, the end result is not going to make anyone happy, because I think that there will be some development of these lots. And we're trying to come up with a reasonable way of doing this that would be beneficial both for the town and for the developer in this instance. Because I find it hard to believe that there'll be no development out there.
Yeah, and I that's perfectly fine. My concern is that I'd like to see these developed in accord with the bylaw.
Yes, sir. And
And
it's
not
our
in,
position
not,
that,
and not in violation of the bylaw. That's my concern.
and how would we accomplish that, Mr. Chittick?
You provide access that isn't illusory. You've agreed to that. That is that comports with our standards, which are width. If it's a subdivision law has those statistics, those metrics. If it's a common driveway, we have a very generous common driveway bylaw, more so than almost any town I've ever heard of. And that also has metrics that what has to happen. But the hang up on a common driveway has to do with enough legal frontage. It may be your only recourse, I think, is a subdivision. Small though it may be.
Which will result in greater land alteration, more removal of trees, and likely the development of more lots to be able to support the additional costs associated with building a subdivision road. I don't see how that's in anyone's best interest.
Well, I'm looking at a bunch of undeveloped lots that you yourself, when you let off, said there were no plans to develop these at present. That doesn't mean there are no plans forever. So I can
Well,
see
that's a different
development in
conversation.
our future as it is.
No. You called me out on this, which is that if you're looking for some form of restriction that would restrict the development of this 8.7 acre parcel to only these 3 new lots, that's certainly something I can discuss with the client, because he's not trying to trick the town.
Yeah,
and get
and I'm
something
not
out
trying to
there.
get into design either, Adam. I'm just trying to apply the bylaw, and
Yes,
in
sir.
my mind, I guess it's a little clearer than it is to some others. That you've got to, maybe you only have one option, you might have 2, but it may not be the option that you're showing us tonight, that's all. I mean, and we have to agree to disagree. on
Yes,
that.
sir.
And I want to do some more research, and I would hope my colleagues would, ponder this as well. This is tricky. But at present, I think John is right, and primarily or largely on his point number 3. But I don't want to get into, again, parsing his letter. I know where you stand. And you have every right to disagree with his letter. Of course you do.
Yes, sir. But that's what this exercise is. We're parsing his letter. Those are the grounds for the denial of the building permit. And so that's the exercise.
But I don't, okay, and let me just go on. I don't think we need to find all 3 conditions present to support his denial. To my mind, any one of these 3 is sufficient grounds to support a denial.
I would agree with that, sir.
Okay, and Mike, Dickey has suggested that we dig in a little deeper on one with the public safety folks, the fire department, and John is going to be looking at building code relevancy. We can talk about two, but I think item 3 is probably where this hinges.
Shared driveway, yes, sir. So.
I mean, you know, as I say, it's my point of view, you don't have to.
I'm just reading the regulations, that's all.
Okay, well, board, would you entertain the notion that we could continue this for a month and that we should do some homework? And I think maybe Carolyn could give us a hand in terms of town council opinion as well, but there may have to be case law looked at as well. I mean, whenever you have zoning bylaws that are 50 years old, you know, laws will appear. Dave McMorris is vice chair. Do you have other questions? Do you think we could profitably continue this hearing? And
Yeah, I think we've got a number of things that we want to look at and think about. We've had a lot of information come at us
yeah,
tonight and a lot of conflicting thoughts about how that fits. I had one, I guess, procedural question, and I probably know the answer to it. Let's, I guess, assume that we decided that the building commissioner was wrong, and we upheld the appeal. Can the building inspector then issue a denial based on other grounds, or is that the end of the road?
over to you, Carolyn.
I can't say that I've ever seen that happen before. Again, I don't think that this is, if there's something new, or if there's a change to the plan, or if there is something that perhaps the building inspector missed the first time around, I suppose he could find another basis for denying it. But, the idea is not supposed to be that the building commissioner can have multiple bites at the apple and keep throwing something up against the wall as the so-called basis for denial in hopes that eventually something sticks. But I do think that if he legitimately noticed something in the plans that had not previously occurred to him, I think he could deny again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and anybody else?
Is it possible for the next hearing to have the park commissioner make some opinions on the?
Oh, sure. I don't know if he needs to be present or not, but
No.
I'm sure he'd be happy to if you want. But at least render an opinion.
It would help my thinking.
Yes, Mr. Atkins, as we said, we're happy to consider changes to the
Okay, so
driveway
that would
design
be in
to
everybody's
accommodate
interest.
fire safety equipment. We have no interest in not doing so.
Your bigger problem may be Black Horse Lane and not this property over that culvert.
I'm not sure I can do anything about Black Horse Lane, Mr. Chitter.
I know. I'm just saying that maybe
Which is another argument to minimize the amount of traffic that would travel down Black Horse Lane and limit the number of lots to be developed.
oh, that's always possible. Okay. So Charlie, we'll do that. I would like to take a look at the I don't know whether I want to take a look at the 1926 actual registration deeds or not. But anyway, let's see where this goes. I certainly, I think there's probably cases that we can look at as well as some more evidence on the ground. So I'd make a motion to continue.
No,
this
Woody, I
hearing.
think I'm in agreement too that we'll need to continue. I see there's just a couple things came in the chat. I don't know if we have to acknowledge.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
Cassandra.
Thanks, Matt. I was just going to pop in and say that. Yes, we have one
Thank you, Matt.
comment in the chat from Bernadette Faulkner. The comment in question is, when in the process, whether considering a subdivision or a shared driveway approach, does the condition, sufficiency, and conservation issues of Black Horse Lane be seriously evaluated, and the access for emergency vehicles on Black Horse Lane, not just within the subdivision?
Okay, I don't know if I have an answer per se to that one. Carolyn, what happens when the way, the private way, I think it's private, but it may be public, is public, is inadequate? In other words, there is a pinch point that she's talking about on Black Horse Lane where I think it narrows to about 8 feet. You can get a truck, I mean, but that's not Adam's responsibility per se, and it's not before us. Does that
Well,
get
and it
considered?
depends. Well, it depends where this pinch point is and whether or not it's part of the public layout or whether it's part of this private way that then connects
the
to
public.
Lot C.
It's part of the public layout.
If it's part of, okay, if it's part of the public way, then between the select board and Department of Public Works, they could take steps to widen that way.
Okay, so that would be Bernadette's answer. Bernadette, I don't know how to tee that up, but I mean, that's a reasonable. As Adam says, that's not his direct responsibility. Who else? Is John, were you saying?
No,
something?
I just kind of think the reason why we sent him in the direction of the planning board was to address this at a larger scale, as to just driveway and lots. That's why we wanted some of these issues addressed. That was I think that's the venue for the, as to where they should be addressed. But that's
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I didn't think we were able to do it through the, again, the
You're frozen. Okay.
Through a single permit, he doesn't have that objection, so, but.
Okay. Sandra, who else?
That was all.
Last comments, it's late. Carolyn, anything last, or that we can probably regroup and figure out who does what? Well, I guess. You there? Well, okay, I make a motion to continue this hearing until May 2nd.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Woody Chidick, aye?
Dave McMorris, aye.
Early against an eye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Okay, so Adam, we will see you,
Mr.
but in the
Speaker,
interim. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just, Mr. Chair, it just occurs to me, May 2nd, assuming town meeting does not conclude on Monday night, May 1st,
Oh,
it will be continued to May 2nd. I don't know if the board wants to move its meeting date. I also realize you may have also continued some other things earlier
everything,
tonight
yeah.
that would be impacted by changing. I mean, it's entirely possible that everything will conclude on the night of the 1st.
I don't know. It's, how does the board feel
Yeah,
about?
I think the warrant was, I don't know where they netted out, but I think the warrant was reduced significantly, right?
Okay,
Last I saw,
Mhm.
it's hovering around 25 articles or so, but it's got The last half dozen are zoning articles.
Oh. Well. All right, David, you've been around the block a few times, and Charlie, you too. What do you think? Should we reschedule this hearing just to be on the safe side? And now, and what do we do about the motions we've made earlier, continuing other hearings until May 2nd?
Well,
Well, you're sort of stuck with those, but I suppose if town meeting were to continue to May 2nd, what the board could do is quickly call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock and immediately move to continue everything on that meeting to your, whatever next date you choose to set.
Yeah,
That certainly is an option to the board, or just stick with May 2nd for Black Horse Lane, and we keep our fingers crossed that we conclude on May 1st.
okay. Dave, how do you feel?
That was my thought as well. I mean, if it gets kicked, if town meeting goes over to Tuesday, we can meet for 5 minutes, continue it to following week or whatever, and then
Yeah.
deal with them then.
I agree.
Cross our fingers. Okay, so we've made the motion and continue this till May 2nd, and if we have to have a quick meeting to further continue it, so we shall at the earliest possible. We have two, and I hate to delay things, but we have two decisions. Well, I don't know about the third decision, but we have two decisions to approve. And I don't know, Dave, if the Roach decision was there a draft of that? I didn't.
Yeah, I sent the latest to Cassandra late this afternoon.
But I'd like to kind of clean these up, and the first was 30 Beach Street. We did have a draft. It was a dock. Any issues? Or could we, I'd make a motion to approve the decision at 30 Beach Street for a dock.
Second,
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded, all in favor, Woody Chitik, aye?
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Okay, then I'd make a motion to approve the decision drafted for a dock at 55 Black Horse Lane. It needs one little, when did we advertise insertion? But I think the rest of it probably is okay. And so it's subject to a couple of amendments and data. We could approve that. So I'd make a motion to approve 55 Black Horse Lane dock.
Second,
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor, Woody Chitik, aye?
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
And I'm recused in the next one. Dave, you want to just take over that one? I'll just go mute.
Sure. I sent, we had a draft go around a few weeks ago on 30 Forest Notch. And then we got some more material in the last few days because they wanted to add a little bit more. They wanted to add a little bit more to the garage, some of which a minor square footage of facade is going to be in the setback. I didn't think that those changes changed the nature of the project at all. I thought percentage of increase was like 40%, which is a lot, but the actual square footage of the increase is pretty minimal and is not going to have any significant impact on the neighborhood. So I thought that we should approve it. And I did send, did you get it, Cassandra? I sent it like 4 o'clock maybe.
You did. I didn't get it until after I already left the office though, so I
Okay.
didn't have a chance to distribute
I
it, but I
just-
do have it.
I do sometimes think I sent things that didn't get to their destination, so that's
I got
cool.
it.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the proposal. That seems reasonable to me. What you just mentioned. So I don't know, would we, if others agree, would we make a motion to just approve it as reviewed?
and I'll edit it again or
Yeah.
see if there's anything else we need to add, but
Yeah. Did they, I know I missed the continued portions tonight, so did they make note of the little bit of an addition that you mentioned?
yeah, he gave me the, the dimensions and the square footage and everything,
Okay.
percentage changes and all that, so I could put them in.
Yeah, I remember the part, that was the one that was like, it was Lee's neighbor.
Right.
So, yeah, seemed pretty reasonable, so I think I would be comfortable with it.
Okay. Can I do a motion?
I'll make a motion
To approve it?
to approve it with appropriate amendments.
Okay,
Seconded.
all right, moved and seconded to approve it with the appropriate amendments. Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Michael Dickey, aye.
Matt Watkins, aye.
Yes,
I'm just saying that.
we're almost through.
Okay,
And you're free to come back.
Okay, whoops. Okay, one last thing, let's approve the minutes. I thought they were fine. I didn't see anything funny about them at all. Minutes of March 7th, 2023. I make a motion to approve those minutes.
second,
Moving seconded, Woody Chidick, aye.
Dave McMorris, aye.
Charlie Higginson, aye.
Okay,
Mike Dickey, aye.
Matt
thanks.
Watkins, aye.
All right. Sure.
Right. One more thing, Woody.
Yeah.
Are the dock on Jerusalem and the Black Horse Lane decisions assigned yet?
Oh, good point. The dock on, or the one in Black Horse Lane dock, that's.
No. The Black Horse Lane, the appeal, the building commissioner.
Oh,
appeal.
yeah, no, it hasn't been assigned, and the other, the 185 Jerusalem hasn't been assigned. Does somebody want to? I mean, I'm happy to do one of these, I don't care.
Didn't it sound as if 185 Jerusalem was going to become a
A
variance?
variance, that's 2 months out. Why don't we assign it when we open that up? Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
That saves us there.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, it may or may not end next month.
In Spring Street, we need to get architecturals.
Yeah. Somebody want to do Spring Street when they come in with plans?
I'll do Spring Street.
Okay. They seemed amenable. Okay. And we will have Pompeo. I mean, we'll have some cases, but this one, I don't know. Why don't we wait a little bit on this signing this, Dave, because I think there's a lot here.
There is. Hopefully, Cassandra.
Unless you want to. This may be. Somebody want to take the 3 appeals that we've merged? Or do you want to wait until we have another go around?
I think we should wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know which twists and turns will take place. Okay, so we got that one decision only for next month. And a couple of new ones. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry this went so late. Apologize.
Wasn't your fault.
Well, yes, it was. I was doing all the talking. One of you has to be assigned to keep me from, give me the timeout or have the hourglass.
Jeez,
me know.
Woody, I thought the sound of snoring would do it.
All right. Okay, everybody, have a happy Easter weekend.
Motion to adjourn, Woody?
Motion to adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, we'll do it collaboratively. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're out of here.
Good night,
Night all.
everyone.
Good night.